It is Championship Sunday here in the Phase 2 playoffs of the SMITE Pro League. Dolson and Mifflin on the desk to bring you through it. Miff, what a weekend we've had to get up to this point. Some upsets, some predictions from dogs that have gone awry, and now we've got a rematch of the Phase 1 finals. That should be a good one.
It blows my mind, man. If I didn't watch that replay just then, I would still think SSG was coming in the finals here.
Right.
I thought it was a shoo-in. I didn't expect Renegades to have the run that they had either. It's been a week of upsets. I don't think we're out of the question for seeing another one in the finals.
Well, let's see how we got here. Radiance began their weekend with a 3-0 over PK, moved on again, as you mentioned there, Miff, against SSG. A 3-1 pushed them on into the finals up against Ghost Gaming. Ghost Gaming obviously had a bye thanks to their Phase 2 final standings, and they chose Renegades, who had a big win over Sanguine earlier on in the weekend. So we are left with Ghost Gaming up against Radiance. Mifflin, these two teams, I think, have changed since we talked about how they need to play against one another in the Phase 1 finals. This Radiance team, remember, very hot and cold in Phase 1, had a similar hot and cold streak here in Phase 2. On an individual basis, you look at this Radiance team, how do you think these guys are playing?
Right now, each one of these guys individually is coming in with some of the hottest hands I've ever seen. Each one of them are individually playing at their absolute peak throughout the entire year, and I think this is the right one to start off with. Adapting in particular has found some picks that are absolutely working for him. He's playing this initiator role. He's the first one in, the last one out on these team fights. He's on the Bastet, the Circuit, and it's really revolving around him. When he's looking good, the rest of Radiance follows suit.
Yeah, adapting. I imagine we see this Circuit pick at some point. It looked so good for Radiance yesterday against SSG, so definitely something to keep your eyes open for. I think Cyclone Spin has really started to hit the gas for this team here as well. I mean, it's sort of hard. This is one of those teams now to highlight anyone specifically because it seems like everyone is playing their role at the highest possible level. It's easy to kind of discount Radiance during the phase, but this is a team that has now shown twice that come tournament time, they will lock in and they will take these games to you. How important do you think it is, though, for this Radiance team to withstand that Ghost early game, and do you think they have the tools to do it?
I think they certainly do, because Radiance is a team that's accustomed to playing for the late game, even though recently, especially in the playoffs, we've seen them shift their focus a little bit more so towards early game pressure. That doesn't take away from the rest of the year where they were playing an almost Sanguine style, waiting for that 20-25 minute mark to group up and team fight. If Ghost Gaming is able to bring that signature pressure that we know that they can, I'm sure that Radiance has definitely got a plan for it.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Ghost Gaming. This is the team that, 4 out of 5 of us, 5 out of 6 of us voted on to be the winners here at the end of the Phase 2 playoffs. Again, they got the bye, so we've only seen the one look at them. That was up against the Renegades yesterday. Slow going in a couple of those games, but ultimately Ghost's play style would win the day there. Miff, I asked you what you think the Ghost key to victory was, and at 12:03 p.m. today, I was just shy of an hour ago, just over an hour ago, rather. I have you quoted as saying they need to load into the game. Do you still stand with that? Do you think Ghost Gaming have the edge?
I think they do, man. Ghost is everyone's favorite for a reason, but there's some nuance there. I think Ghost right now is in an interesting spot, playing up against a Radiance who is revitalized and playing at their best. Some individual members of Ghost, off of that one set we got to saw yesterday, are struggling a little bit. It's Sam for Soccer, who isn't having that signature, just best player in the world energy that we expect from him. But the rest of Ghost has been able to step up for that lacking. PBM in particular playing incredibly well. FineOK has been popping off, looking like the untouchable god of solo lane. If they can keep that up, I think my point still stands. If they load in, they've got my vote.
Yeah, Ghost has kind of next man up energy, don't they? Where if it's not going to be Sam for Soccer, maybe it's Mike. If it's not going to be Mike, it's going to be a 10-0 FineOK on the Osiris, I suppose. This team looks near unstoppable. But Radiance, they are definitely here to play. I wouldn't be surprised if this one goes the distance. Head coach for Ghost Gaming, Slaney, sat down with us for a pregame interview.
All right, we've got coach for Ghost Gaming, Slaney, joining us now. Slaney, congratulations on making it to the finals, and here we are again. You guys make it to the finals, and you're facing off against Radiance. Feels like deja vu all over again from Phase 1. How has your team changed since the last time you two squared off in the finals?
I think we've actually gotten a lot better late game. Obviously, throughout the year, everyone's always said that we're a really early game centric team, and I think we've made like big strides this phase in improving our late game. And I think you can kind of see that in the fact that we're not drafting as early game. And I think that we've really improved late game, which is saying a lot considering we've had some of the longer sets throughout the year, even in phase 1. So.
And now you face off against the Radiance team that their hallmark was a little bit more late game, but they had some quicker games against Space Station yesterday. How has Radiance changed since the last time you saw them?
Radiance, it's kind of weird because Radiance are a team that I think they have 5 players that always perform in moments when they need to, which I think makes them always scary for LAN. They kind of seem like they just always end up clicking when it really matters at the end. So it's kind of hard to tell how they've changed because I still would say that they're a very late game or mid game centric team rather than early. I think they've just as a team become better at being cohesive and like playing through each other.
Well, now that we have you two in the finals, we know that both of you two will be your first and second seeds come Worlds. It's just a matter of who wins here today. What matters more to you and your team, securing that first seed for Worlds or securing that first place bag and the prize money?
It's probably a mix of both. It always feels good to like win, but I mean, getting more money is also a nice little bonus, so I'd say it's about 50-50.
Looking forward to it, man. Good luck today, and I'm sure we're in for a great set.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, very important point that Aggro brings up there. This one, obviously, prize money implications, but also seeding implications for the SMITE World Championships, coming up early on there in January. Mifflin, final thoughts here on this one. I'm not going to ask you to predict who wins, but how surprised would you be if this one goes 4 or 5 games?
I think that it's likely going to be a very momentum-based set. Both of these teams have dropped, maybe 1 map throughout the entire weekend.
Right.
I think whoever wins Game 1 is going to have a lot of momentum to carry them through to Game 2. I'm maybe at most predicting 4 matches.
Hey, fair enough. We'll see if the momentum can carry one team or the other into the finals. Picks and bans for game number 1. Let's delay no further and jump right on into things. I'm looking at the junglers, I think, here in this one, as you should. You know, adapting, we talked about how he's been playing a great facilitator play style over some of their games here this weekend. And Sam, while the KDAs may have struggled, I think he's done an okay job as far as, you know, on the Susano, he can maybe find a target here or there, do some big damage too. How important do you think getting a comfort pick or a team facilitator pick for Sam and adapting is going to be? Do you see a lot of overlap between those two? How contested maybe do you think some of those jungle picks are going to be?
I think that Sam has the potential to be able to strip away some of Adapting's picks, but I don't think there's a lot of overlap in terms of comfort. When we think of Sam for soccer, I think of the capability to play everything on the Assassin tab with a couple of specialties. Circuit, not really one of them. Daji, not either, right, which is where we really allocate Adapting's time. That's where we really think he wants to go. I think Ghost could definitely look to ban out Adapting, and if they don't, Radiance should be looking to pick him up his god in the top 3, because as far as I'm concerned, his Circuit is leagues better than the rest of his god pool.
Well, it's time to catch up. I agree with everything you say there, Mifflin. I think it's time to catch up a little bit on the first 6 bans that we've gotten here. Yamoja, Nike, Kabrakan taken off the board here for Ghost Gaming. Lots of team fight there, lots of lockdown in there as well that Ghost Gaming want to take off the board. Fafnir has been a popular ban, not only by Radiance, but teams just playing against Ghost in general. We know that Mike likes that pick out of the support role, and it's near unstoppable at points. He sort of plays it as a pseudo-warrior, jumping on the back line and effectively deleting them. Cyclone Spin is going to get to reprise his Cupid here, Miff, and that's something we've seen throughout this weekend that's been a strong power point for this Radiance team. The sustain is obviously good, but plenty of team fight there for Cyclone Spin to make an impact on.
He's been looking very good on this pick as well. He's been playing very aggressively, dashing in, finding the fields of love, forcing his lane opponent out. He's got some experience playing against Rom on this matchup as well. I think that Cyclone Spin's strategy for the entirety of this weekend has been, I'm going to sit in my lane, I'm going to farm up to level 16, level 17. If a fight comes my way, I'll participate, but I'm not going to go out of my way to get in there. And it's a strategy that's been working out for Radiance.
And another thing that we have mentioned that works out for Radiance is this Circuit pick for adapting, so I am not at all surprised that we see her picked up here. She is right around that 2/3 of the time pick ban, 50% in the pick column, 14% in the ban column, but Miff, a massive 71% win rate. We're starting to see this rise of the Circuit, and it's not like she necessarily builds all that full-blown insta-burst assassin. She kind of has the ability to get in with a little bit of tankiness and set up for the rest of her team. So I think you got to like the way Radiance have now rounded out their top 3.
Yeah, it feels like Radiance got exactly what they wanted. Each one of their individual picks fits that playstyle. This Guan Yu, though, is interesting. They could pivot it into the support role. We know that Aurora likes it. They could send him over in the solo lane, a la something you'd see along a variety pick, something like that. I think that it's very interesting, and it's going to make Ghost think a little bit harder about where they want to go in this second phase of bans. But the strategy's there. The same thing we've been seeing from Radiance all weekend has already been formed in these core 3 picks. They're looking for that late-game team fight and huge pick potential in the early game.
And for Ghost Gaming, it looks like all 3 of their lanes have been locked in, depending on where that set goes. Rom, of course, will be over in the duo lane, Poseidon for Twig out of the mid. Set, we've seen this set move around a good bit, but when you look at Ghost Gaming, specifically, FineOK has really enjoyed this set out of the solo lane, so that's initially where my gut reaction assumes that this pick will go, but we'll have to see how the rest of it kind of plays out. So a little bit of an advantage there for Ghost Gaming to play off some of that flexibility. Second wave of bans starting to roll through now. Ares out of nowhere this weekend is starting to find some ban priority, and how about this? Persephone falls down to the second wave of bans as well. Interesting how kind of some of the god priority Mifflin shifts here as the weekend goes on.
Yeah, blows my mind that Persephone makes it that far down. For my money, one of the best ultimates in the game. But I think Radiance agrees with you, Dave, about this set going into the solo lane because they followed up with a Tsukiyomi and Erlang Shen ban, targeted jungle out. I think it's a pretty smart pickup, and I think it makes a lot of sense that they want to go there. But now Ghost Draft is really starting to round itself out. This set out of solo should be a lane bully, even if it is the Guan Yu over there, one of the more survivable solo laners. Followed up with the Khepri, we know that PBM likes to camp out that short lane. Makes it very easy to follow up on these kills. I think Ghost Gaming also have themselves a team comp that fits their playstyle perfectly.
Now look at Radiance and how they've picked their first pick in their second round here, and it's the Ra for Big Man Tings. It's one thing to talk about the setup and the team fight around certain picks, but you have to have the damage to follow up on that setup. And I think the Ra and now, or the Cupid and now the Ra have the ability to do so. Kuzenbo will finalize the draft here for Radiance. What do you think of their 5?
It's strong. It's annoying for carries to no doubt in my mind. Guan Yu and Kuzumo running down a hunter in the backline. Cyclones or Ghost is really going to struggle around keeping their hunter alive. I think it's going to create a lot of space for Cyclone Spin. I think BMT is going to have a lot of space for himself as well. Essentially, Radiance picks themselves up 3 initiators with 2 backline carries, whereas Ghost has got a lot more frontline centric. Poseidon has to play a little bit further up. Set has to be in your face. Khepri and Odin as well. If it comes down to the late game team fight, I think I'm going to favor out Radiance.
Does your mind change at all here, Set and Odin? I mean, it still would look like FineOK playing Set out of the solo. Does that mean that we see a Sam for Soccer Odin out of the jungle, or do you maybe see a little flip-flop potential there between those 2?
I think I would prefer to see Odin out of solo, just because it's been so long since Odin jungle's really been meta. But if Odin does swing itself into the jungle here, he's going to have very strong matchups into the duo lane in particular. Cupid is going to struggle with that cage. It should result in a kill every single time.
Mifflin, it is time. Radiance versus Ghost Gaming, Phase 2 Playoff Finals, Game 1. Let's go.
Thank you, Dolson and Mifflin on the desk. Indeed, the finals. Radiance and Ghost Gaming about to do battle for #1 overall seed at Worlds. Finch and Goremizer here. Doug is the one on the camera here for us. And Gore Ra has taken over the middle lane. A lot of people think might be the strongest mid laner right now. Is Odin in the jungle for Sam the answer?
I mean, it's really funny. Mifflin had mentioned it's been a while since Odin jungle was meta, and when I think of that, like, I think back to old Odin passive, like, can see over walls because of his ravens and extended vision Odin passive. Like, that's years and years ago that's going to be something that's meta. But it's exactly what you highlight. I mean, look at it. Benji, Big Man, Aurora, Cyclone, none of them have a reliable way to get out of that wall. The only downside is, as you can see, Benji already starting off with that Phantom Veil, something we got to see on Friday, and something I expect that we'll see Aurora pick up for his level 12 relic, so they have 2 of them, and that's just going to nullify Sam for Soccer's walls the same way it did Neil when they were playing up against the Knights. They already have this experience. If Sam doesn't utilize this as early on, especially in the duo lane, it might just be all for 9.
Might still be a chance for you all to vote on who you think will win, and maybe you've got some information as Mike is lower or close. But PDM, 2 veteran to fall there, able to avoid the pressure from Radiance's duo lane. But Gore, maybe not a big surprise that this Cupid Kuzenbo have this kill potential, this pressure against Khepri Rom. Rom certainly can push and Khepri can help, but in terms of being able to battle, especially at those first couple of levels, Kuzenbo Cupid not going to be doing too bad over here at all. We have percentages in here now, though, for these predictions. I got a little bit of my UI over here at this point, but Gore, they're all pretty much leaning towards Ghost here over Radiance on this one, 66-33. Do you think it's that much favoring them?
Man, I think late game, like Sam, again, is probably a wild card late game just because I expect 2 Phantom Veils, which ultimately will mean his ult might not mean as much, but it's the stuns, how much he's hitting those, how often they're able to lock him down, as well as that res from Mike. That's what makes me lean a little more towards the late game Ghost comp, just knowing that Mike's going to be able to bring that and have that saving play, whether it's for FineOK, Twig, Panda Cat, Sam, or himself, honestly, if he really needs it. Having that 6th life is just such a big factor for a lot of those, you know, late game, like really sweaty, let's say 30-minute Fire Giants where it's winner take all. I think that could give them a pretty heavy edge, but we're already seeing where this aggression comes through. I mean, yesterday in the SSG set, this Raw was banned out from Radiance every single game. I'm excited to see what it can do. We've seen adapting on this Circuit. It's just going to be good.
Yeah, I think Sam wants this duo lane gang, but a big stun onto Mike and Panda Cat. There's no potential there with the duo lane taken out of the equation. Sam not able to get anything off of that timing. He's going to back, though. Should be back there for the speed in time. So not a whole loss on that one there, Gore, but Radiant showing that they're not asleep here at the wheel, not letting Sam get away with any early game shenanigans.
And honestly, this is, again, what they need to do, at least for the duo lane. Like, you can get aggressive as long as you know Sam's not over here, and now that he's failed a gank, you're pretty confident you can see them moving up with it. This Cupid has been so successful so far this weekend. I don't think Cyclone Spin has a care in the world, like no sweat off his back for it. He's been able to play it successfully. And so it puts the pressure on Sam, I think, more than on adapting to make the play.
But it's adapting, he's getting aggressive. Sam leaps over the wall, though, back towards safety under his own tier 2 tower, but this blue buff invade not over yet. Tings rotates in a little bit ahead of Captain Twig, but FineOK's looking for battle in the back, but it's Sam who ends up low. There's your playoffs. First blood going to Benji as the Radiant are already on the board.
And that's a scary thought. Benji has been such a driving factor for this team, and most of the time you don't get it until the late game. Now that he's already got a kill on board, they can continue this aggression.
Oh, just barely off the mark there with that Cobra's Kiss snipe, but I love this aggression from Radiance. Twig not going to be able to find a punishing kill in return. They came over there so early, Gore. That snipe from Raw was the very first ultimate on the map, and here's Cyclone Spin responding with his, not finding anything over there in duo. But this is what we've seen from adapting on this Circuit pick in particular. I thought Ghost might even ban it from him. He plays aggressively on this pick.
Yeah, this has been the conversation. I mean, we talked about it on the desk yesterday. I think we were talking about it at the end of the day on Friday after we watched their set, and we're like, man, Circuit and Daji seem to be 2 easy bans against Radiance, but then you let so much through on the other end of it that you have to really weigh it. But right now, with the way Adapting's been playing this weekend, I start to prioritize them a little bit more. If this game continues at this pace, right, it's almost 2,000, maybe about 1,500 gold in favor of Radiance, then I expect to start seeing maybe more of a focus onto Adapting, try to lock him down early, especially because he's the only one who can escape the Odin Cage to begin with, just in his own right. Then maybe you find more lockdown for Sam. You can right the ship if you're Ghost Gaming. Otherwise, I'm starting to think of Game 2 and yeah, we're banning Circuit, or maybe they let it through again and they just devise a different strategy to deal with it.
They have to show us something, right, to be able to deal with this Circuit if they're going to let Adapting play what seems to be right now his best god. Benji considering a rotation, he heads right back over to solo, so no big action going to be happening over here in this middle lane. So we know where Adapting's going with his build. He loves to get Sledge in this slot right after those boots, maybe even something like a Void Shield after that. But what do you want to see from Sam? I mean, they have the set in solo lane, so does Sam have to go super damagey? Maybe he can afford to go more tanky. What do you want to see from him?
Man, that's the really awkward part. He's already got that mace, so he is looking like maybe a Jotuns just to get the cooldowns a little bit faster, have that combo, the jump, the shield ready a little bit more often, as well as the stun, realistically. But honestly, you're up against Raw, a Brawlers, as well as maybe a Divine Ruin eventually for Twig. Isn't really a bad idea. That out-of-combat healing for Radiance is just going to be a lot to handle later on. So they need to maybe prioritize that earlier instead of letting it get out of hand.
This is a great rotation from Ghost, though. Radiance were looking to punish this blue buff again for the invade, but Ghost showed up in numbers early. Everyone except the ADCs got involved in this one to make sure that blue buff got defended, and they're going to need to do a lot more of that core to make sure they don't let Radiance keep up this early pressure. I'm a bit surprised it was Radiance. I kind of thought the team with the Odin might be looking to be more of the early aggressors, but so far, they've been a bit on the back foot here trying to deal with what Radiance have been doing and putting pressure on their jungle as Benji's ultimate. Looking to see if he can defend his own blue buff. I believe that FineOK was able to strip that one away.
And this is where I think FineOK is going to start being a little more pivotal, right? He hit that level 6 mark. That's the part where Mifflin has pointed out as the really big turning point for Set. You hit level 6, you've got your ult, you've got a couple of points in your abilities. Your damage really starts to spike around here. And for FineOK, that's where his counter potential goes, right? If you get a good gank from Sam over there that locks down Benji, even though you get the Phantom Veil, maybe you burn the Relic, but either way, you get the lockdown and potentially the kill onto this Guan Yu.
Wow. Not Aurora, Mike is lurking over there towards Solo. No chance of a gank on Benji, though, not with him this far underneath his own Tier 1 tower. So Mike will just take the back here instead. And everyone is back over to their own sides of the jungle here on this one now. So we'll have a little bit of time then, Gore, I think, before we see any of our next bit of action. And one of the things I've been noticing is the ADCs have had to wait. But maybe I'll have to wait as Adapting is looking for a solo lane gank after all. It's FineOK, that's the target. Beads, though, are available. So FineOK makes it out easily, but now he's more vulnerable without that safety relic.
Yeah, knowing that Adapting could just come over here at any point in the next 2 minutes and find a kill once that ult is available again means that Adapting is probably going to start focusing on this side of the jungle. Haven't really seen a lot of focus on the left side since that gank gone wrong for Sam. Not really able to find too much. Ends up losing his life in some of these fights as well. So you had kind of highlighted it. You would expect the team with the Odin to be aggressive, and I honestly think it's detrimental that it's not. I mean, I'm looking 6 more levels, and granted for support, that's an eternity, but you got to do something.
He blink ulted. Kraken was the response from Twig as well, and still they're unable to find the kill. Teams took Aegis as his first relic there, Gord. I think that's what kept him alive there. So smart. He doesn't need beads in this matchup. He needs to make sure that Kraken isn't one-tapping him. And now Mike trying to do what he can to defend these camps. Not going to be able to against Adapting and Aurora together, but FineOK is rotating in. There's the blink out from Adapting. So FineOK goes back to his own side.
Nothing feels worse than dumping 2 ults in to try and get a kill, and then Big Man Ting's just... Granted, yeah, he burns his Aegis. Those ults should be back a little faster. You can maybe get aggressive onto him then, but you have another minute or so before you have any of those coming through, and you just have to sit on it and wait while it comes in. PBM, as much as you want to get aggressive, as much as I think FineOK could maybe apply some pressure being a level 9 Set, he's half health. Your team behind you doesn't have their ults. Even if you take this fight and get the pressure, I don't know that there's really a lot to come out of it other than the farm.
Aurora moves in with that watery grave. Unable, though, to defend the buff, but Mike gets hit by the searing pain. Now Benji closing the gap, so Mike uses the ultimate on himself. That is enough to deter that kill coming out from Benji. And I know we don't often love when supports use that ultimate on themselves, but that was the right timing as Panda Cat gets caught by the Fields of Love, held onto his ultimate. That's becoming a bit of a trend this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, just locking him down. Speaking of locking down, FineOK stuck under the tower.
And Adapting, able to find that kill. Constant pressure here from Radiance. And even though they couldn't defend the blue, they do move up and get that kill in right lane there onto FineOK.
And they get so much out of that, right? They knew FineOK's beads were down, so that was a pretty easy call for them. They had burned it last time they were here, but they also get the sprint plus the ult from PBM. Like, even if PBM had been able to stay in this area, but he was too low health to do that, there wouldn't have been the ability to save him there. And it's an easy tier 1 tower dive, 9 minutes in. You're not maybe able to completely knock the thing down, but you can ignore the damage for a little bit. You've got a Guan and a Ra on your side. Your healing is not going to be an issue, at least not for you. For Ghost, on the other hand, they really need to start thinking about that. I see the Jotuns has come down for Sam. Again, that cooldown is very important for Odin, and you're going to have the Doom Orb coming through for Twig, but they're going to be lacking that anti-kill.
But here's that gank we wanted earlier, and this time Cyclone Spin, no ultimate and only the beads, has no way to get out of there. That is the pressure we're going to need to see more of from Sam. I'm just so surprised. 10 minutes in before the first successful bit of pressure over there in duo.
He's had that ult for 5 levels now, and that is the first time that we've gotten to see it be fully effective. It did burn that Aegis earlier for big man teams with the help of the Kraken from Twig, but it hasn't really been the driving factor I kind of expected it to be. I mean, it's not necessarily the longest cooldown either. Normally, I would, again, want him to be a little more aggressive. We also haven't seen a lot of those stuns from this Odin yet. There's got to be something late game for this. Ghost, I mean, this is a team in Radiance that you can't really just roll over in 24 minutes, at least not at this pace, and they've been able to stabilize. They were about 1,500 gold down to only about 300, but there is still a lead going in favor of Radiance. Now with the Pyromancer, it's going to jump back up a little bit, and they have to be careful where they engage. I think their team fight is still pretty solid, but I see a Phantom that hasn't had to be used yet because Sam hasn't been feeling it, and that just means Benji's going to have a pretty big impact when he rotates into these fights.
This is a great response from Ghost, though. Radiance take the Pyromancer, well then Ghost will take its big brother, Gold Fury, going over to the Chaos side team, and that now brings this game right back towards that even plateau. You mentioned that Ghost had fought their way back close to even, then Radiance took Pyro, well, that Gold Fury evens things right back up. And I don't want to make it seem like this Odin Cage is going to get a whole lot less ineffective. I mean, it is likely that there might be a second Phantom from Aurora, as you've been alluding to, but even then, at the very least, Sam should be able to pressure teams out of fights. But still, you think that there'd be an advantage to the time where there's maybe only one, and it might not even be around because it's on Benji, but not been a whole lot of pressure from him.
Well, the glory is it's coming from the jungle this time. So you roll back to Friday, Radiance versus the Knights. Neil is almost always caught out. Every time he ults, Benji or Aurora are right on top of them and ready to pop one of the 2 Phantom Veils to make sure they get out of that. Any of their carries always feel safe. Like, no one ever felt threatened by that Odin pick for the support role from minute 0, realistically. I mean, maybe there were a couple minutes where they were worried about it, but it just seemed to fade into non-existence as the game went on. But because Sam's playing it in the jungle here, I think he has a more through line to get to someone like adapting to Tings, or more than likely Cyclone Spin, just because they have no reliable escape, which will pull Aurora or Benji like away from that front line, away from the peel, and kind of force them to group up, which is better for Twig. There's an easy Kraken for you. I think there's a lot that can be played around. Maybe the cage itself won't be the best utility, but I think the way Radiance have to reply to it will then benefit Ghost Gaming.
Yeah, I think there's a really good chance, right? Just force Radiance to be using their relics on Ghost terms would seem to make some sense here to me. But take a look at this early build path from coming out from Cyclone Spin. He's got the fail. Now, I thought Twig might look for a bit more action there in mid, but that was just an aggressive Whirlpool without much follow-up there. He's already got the crit coming out, though. And this in response to, I guess, an Odin he thinks he'll be building a little bit squishier than normal and a set solo, right? So he should get some good value out of all this crit damage.
Well, you had asked earlier if whether or not I wanted Odin to go a little tanky. He could probably throw a Spectral Armor in there a little bit late game, but Cyclone Spin should get a couple of crits off before then. But he's already gone for this Contagion, and it's one of those things,
right.
You know, Divine Ruin is the kind of expected jungler anti-heal. Odin's not the best Divine Ruin player, god, to have out there. So I like that he's gone for this Contagion just because it does both of those simultaneously, right? It gives you that anti-heal that you're going to need for the Guan and the Ra. It gives you the physical protection to deal with what Cyclone Spin, Benji, and Adapting are going to be able to throw out at you. And it gives him that little bit of extra tankiness. You had highlighted he's going to be a little squishy. Same thing, fine, okay, squishier than what you would expect out of a late-game warrior. But they're both still going to be able to survive just long enough in the backline. I'm not looking at them, or at least not at Sam, as the carry of this game. Odin isn't meant to be the one that gets all the kills. In this case, it's going to be the Set, or the Poseidon, or the Rom. You've got 3 carries coming through. Sam is kind of taking on what Finoke would normally do, has that kind of secondary front line, and really just set up initiator for Ghost Gaming. And I just want to see it soon. We've only seen that cage really be applicable once so far.
Well, Radiance are looking to see if maybe they can invade this red. They get there a little bit too late for that, though. So it looks like everyone's heading back to their corners, except for Mike, who's still kind of pushing up. Aurora and Adapting are right there looking for him. So there is Aurora pinning him against the wall. Cobra's Kiss to keep the CC chain going. But now Mike has some backup coming in as Sam for Soccer has shown up. Still being patient with that ultimate cooldown. They stunned Aurora. The Kraken there too. They don't need the cage if the Poseidon does the damage. But now Mike needs to be careful. Adapting is on him. The Fields of Love come out as well. But Mike still standing by dropping the Scarab's Blessing on himself. Eventually, Ghosts use 4 of their ultimates, everyone that was here, and it nets them the kill onto Aurora.
You know, we always say we're a little timid whenever a support has to use it on themselves. That's twice now that Mike has used his ult to keep him alive, but it gives you movement speed, so it's been great for him in terms of disengage. But also, he's been such a big setup player for them, even on this Khepri. don't mind it as much. Always you want to say, like, give Panda Cat or Twig a second life. That's absolutely going to be more worthwhile. But if you have to stick around in the fight and you get another pluck to maybe find a kill, I think there's some opportunity for it. Unfortunately, Radiance aren't going to give them the time of day. I think they're so far so smart enough to just not hit that final proc to make sure it goes through. And ultimately, I don't know if these trades will keep favoring them. I mean, that one didn't favor them at all, and I'm thinking they're starting to lose some of that grip until they get around like a Fury or a Fire Giant where the pit can really determine the positioning. I think Ghost can look for these jungle brawls and really just catch Radiance off guard.
It just showed up there, didn't it? They thought they had a chance to lock down the mic, but instead Ghost had the cavalry on their way. Kind of took care of Radiance there with that bit of counter initiation. So now we're starting to get a bit of a better idea about what both of these teams are looking to do. Adapting has this Sunder now in his second relic, so no beads, no way he's getting out of trouble. They want to blow up a single target quickly with his combo into that raw snipe. But over on Ghost, I mean, you mentioned it earlier, right? Like maybe there was a chance we would have seen like a Brawlers coming out from this Odin, but he went Contagion, took the CDR from Jotuns instead. So that's why we were being a little bit critical, right? You'd expect it to be at least a few more cages if he's going for the heavy CDR build to start.
And the realistic thing I'm also looking at, because the Sunder came online, the first thing I thought was, what shields are there? Outside of like Kepri's shield, which is not massive, it's not really something you need to Sunder. You do lose a little bit of power for Sam, and you have to remember that shield on Odin scales off your power, and so it's not going to be as potent right here.
Big Kraken lands on the Benji, though, and Benji can't escape. The Field of Love was there to help, but it was not enough. Kraken spells his in. There's the cage, and Aurora is locked inside, but he escapes barely. But Panda Cat has pulled out the scope. Big blink gets Aurora out of trouble. So far, only one casualty, the solo laner for Radiance. They have all scattered to the hills. Ghost regrouping around the objective, and they're burning it quick. Primal Fury down to half. Tings is nearby, but no ultimate, adapting close as well. Radiance looking to try and strip this away at the last moment, but Ghost managed to secure it, and now they're looking for a fight on the back end. Again, Adapting wants to clean up Mike, but can't get through Panda Cat's damage. That's 2 kills plus the Fury.
This team is dealing with Adapting single target pick a little bit better, but Twig, I mean, look, we know you used to be a jungler, but holding W is not the case. You got the Fury, man. Get on out of there. That's just an unfortunate turnaround. I think you saw the kills. I mean, look how low Cyclone Spin is.
Yeah.
That was just not going to work out. But look, he's been doing that since phase 1. He was Raijin dashing into people before. It's not too unexpected to see him hold W. Unfortunate death for him, I think, at the end of the day, but not game-ending overall. Just gives Radiance another little window to try and keep that gold lead a little bit closer.
Yeah, I think, listen, that is part of what you get with Twig, right? You get 5 sick plays from Twig, and then one of those every single time, right? That is part of the package. So
it's
not
in the
gonna be
contract,
too hard
fine
on
line.
it. Exactly, right? That's part of it. So we like Twig going for those plays. Didn't quite work out that time, but Ghost still with a significant advantage despite his spill, right? They're up about 2,000 gold or so at this point, but Radiance are posturing around the Fire Giant core. This is a big call for them, and they're right. Ghosts still have not completely regrouped after resetting, so the FG is now down to half. There aren't a lot of relics left up for Ghost, so Radiance drop down the Fields of Love, but Sam responds with his cage. He makes it out of there alive, and the Fire Giant still leashed, but Adapting hunts down Sam, gets the kill. Kraken lands onto Benji, but Radiance secure the Fire Giant in the back, but they're all so low. Can they escape with their lives as Panda Cat gets Benji? The snipes come out, and Adapting low, but he able to avoid the last 2 shots. The Radiance, with a risky call, get away with the FG.
And this out-of-combat healing, I was going to say they're all so low, it feels like Ghost should be able to get aggressive. Just a tier 2 at this point. I mean, PPM should be able to tank it up a little bit and had a beautiful save in that fight, but it's just not enough to feel confident diving in there. And I'm going to call it finish. In the regular season, like at any point in time, we've seen that kind of Fire Giant start up, and the team drops it. Like, you are not supposed to finish that fight. Like, that is supposed to be, okay, drop, find some kills, then turn around and do it again. The fact that they hold on to it, especially after what we've seen so far, so many different steals that have happened this weekend. I mean, one happened yesterday with the Oboe proc. Granted, I guess since Radiance, was Ghost that did that. It made it a little bit easier for them. I mean, all around, it's maybe a little better for them knowing that, yeah, we can get away with this one, but it feels a little too close for comfort, even in or maybe especially because you're in a finals.
No, you're exactly right? I mean, that was a thin margin, but I think it was a calculated risk for Radiance. They have Great secure with this SMITE, though it's maybe not significantly better than Captain Twigs, right? And they knew that Ghost hadn't completely regrouped after that last fight, so I like the idea. They didn't like the way the momentum was going. They knew they needed a big play, and they end up with fire on 4 targets. I mean, you'd love it to be on Benji, but you're still hitting some of the best possible targets on this team with that buff, so now Radiance have the ball in their court, Goran. Is this an area where they can they start to push? Is this more of a stopgap measure where they're just trying to buy some time? What do you want Radiance to do with this?
Well, realistically, there's still 5 towers on board for Ghost, right? This isn't one that's meant to go in. Maybe you can break a Phoenix, but it's not meant to be game-ending just yet. It is just to equalize things. They're about 2,000 gold down, a couple of tier 1s and a tier 2, and they all of a sudden have the lead back in their favor. They should be able to either clear out all of these towers if they really want, with, 2 minutes left, just a little under. They might be able to rush it down one lane with a good fight, get a Phoenix, but even then you're starting to play with the timer. I think realistically, you just get some of the gold that's on the map in your pockets, go ahead and back to base. You've equalized everything up at that point and got an even game again.
Radiance right now trying to siege the tier 1. Ghost recognizing, as he said, they are still technically in the lead gold-wise, though FG is a tough fight. So they're going to at least put up a soft defense here on the tier 1. But Cyclone Spin slowly whittling away at this tier 1 tower. The mid wave back in, goes too far back. And that is it for this mid-tier 1. No way that Ghosts are going to overcommit for that tier 1 tower. 22 minutes into the game, they're eating up as much of the time of this FG buff as they can.
Yeah, as long as they slow it down. I mean, look, it went from 2 minutes to 1 minute incredibly fast. Now you're lucky if you can even get to the Phoenix line, let alone try to take a Phoenix here. You might be able to swing another tier 1, but Ghosts are putting up a solid defense. They're making it too timid for Cyclone to go in and chunk the tower down like you need your Hunter to do.
Yeah, and Fine-OK over there battling with adapting in the jungle as well, trying to keep him from finding any kind of flank pattern. This next minion wave, though, is here, so Radiance might be looking to step forward, but it's Sam who mibs in first. There's the Blink Kraken, lands onto 2, and it's Aurora who is the first casualty. Fine-OK is in the middle of the fight, but there's too much damage. Tings manages to live through all the sight, but he is in critical condition, though, with the Cupid heals and the Rot heals. That will be A-OK before too long. They even have Fire Giant Sustain. They trade out Solo for support, though, Gore, and I don't know, feel like that still favors Radiance.
I mean, Ghost get to save the tier 2. Maybe there's something to be said in that can tip the scales in their favor, but you burn Fine-OK plus both of his relics. He's going to be out of the fight for a little while. Like you said, you only lose a Roar, which realistically, I mean, adapting, you had highlighted earlier, he does not have any safety relics. He is Blink, he is Sunder. He is not someone who's supposed to live in a lot of these engagements, and he's meant to be playing the way we've seen it. Low damage on the team, he is meant to go in, set up a kill, and either die trying or get out luckily. Right? And so Radiance not only maintained maybe one of their biggest star players adapting this weekend just to keep him going and potentially set up another kill. They get that tier 1. They neutralize some of that lead. It's still a small gold lead here for Ghost Gaming, but 23 minutes in, 1,000 gold isn't really enough to make a huge swing in your favor. And they put themselves in a good position. Fire Giant's 30 seconds away. Aurora respawns. I think that's a good map play by Radiance to just get things in their favor after this next fight.
That's a good point, Gore. Even though that individual fight, probably the trade of Aurora for Fine-OK favors Radiance, but Ghost, they keep their tier 2 tower standing, right? They still technically have a small gold lead, though 24 minutes in. I don't know how much that gold lead really matters here at this point, but Radiance at the very least get the map state in a point where they can move back towards Fire Giant comfortably. They can establish this neutral positioning first. Coming into this one, Mike's still a bit of a ways away from Ankh and Sprint. Should have those up in time, but there is no Aegis there for big man Tings. Every other backline carry has their defensive relics available. If there's going to be an FG battle here, Ghost might be the ones who are a little bit more comfortable with it just based on relics.
It's just an issue. I think, again, you go in, they actually only opted for the one Phantom Veil, and depending on the timers that Ghost are keeping in their head, they should know it's down a little bit longer, but granted, it's so close and margins at this point that you can't rely on Sam to easily be the engage. But so far, it's been Blink, Odin Cage, Kraken. That's the opening combo for Ghost Gaming. And so a couple of missteps from Radiance put them in a range for that, but as long as Benji is one of the 2, 3, 4, however many members that misstep on Radiance, I think they'll be mostly fine to just run away from that. And they snuck this Fire Giant, well, quote-unquote snuck this Fire Giant. They squeezed it out from under Ghost last time. And so there's a good chance for them to try and do it again. But you had mentioned it. Last time they come into this, Ghosts were kind of in disarray. They had just lost a fight, were respawning, trying to regroup and get into it, and Radiance could capitalize on that. They don't have the same advantage this time.
Well, look at this, though. Radiance just kind of moving up in right, looking to see if maybe they can catch someone on Radiance out of position. Aurora blinks in first, and Twig has to use the beads. That is a huge get for Aurora, but maybe Ghost can punish Benji for it. He's been locked in, so Benji is atop the horse. Aurora disrupting in the back with the Watery Grave as well, so the front line for Radiance have made it to safety, and Twig has lost his beads. Meanwhile, Fino K locked in battle with Adapting. That is the last threat down. Sam locks Adapting in with the cage. Panda Cat melts Aurora, and Ghost Gaming suddenly with a 2-kill lead in this battle. Radiance might just have to give it up.
I mean, I don't know if I want to call that luck or just perfect timing from Sam. The only person on Radiance that's supposed to reliably get out of that cage is Adapting, but he had just everything in his kit. And of course he's the one that gets locked down. No one there to save him. Radiance are looking for the steal.
So Ghost able to grab the Fire Giant. Benji stuck inside the whirlpool is food for Sam for soccer. That means Tings and Cyclone Spin without a front line have to run. And Gord, you're so right. What a weird fight there from Radiance, right? It puts them in such an awful position. If they're going to have Aurora go up to look to pull relics, then why is Benji on his own? Why is Adapting so spread out? I mean, it just was not the cleanest fight we've ever seen from him. And now Ghost are burning down this right side Phoenix quickly.
I mean, you're looking at a fight where Big Man Tings just hit 3-4 people with one rot, and instead of being able to get anything on the back of it, they had to watch their right Phoenix get taken down right in front of their eyes. They couldn't do anything to really stall that one. And this is where things get really dangerous. Late game team comps, we'd kind of talked about it. I had mentioned I like the fact that Kepri's going to be here. I was concerned about the Odin maybe making his way here. I thought Radiance, with the way they'd handled it on Friday, were just going to be able to handle it a second time. But it seems a little different to try and lock down Sam, specifically in the timing. He's not using it as that engage the way we saw the Knights trying to use it on Friday. He's using it specifically for when that lockdown is ready. And maybe there's a Kraken behind him, maybe sometimes there's not. As long as they get one kill on the other end, they're feeling pretty confident with it. That one was 3. They open up a Phoenix. There's still 4 towers standing for Radiance. But realistically, all Ghost should see at this point is gold on the map for them to take, something to give them even more of a lead.
Well, Gore, coming into this one, we were talking about the different Hunter picks, right? How Cupid had been, what, 6 for 7, I think you said, up until this point, and Rom was 0 for 2. But it's the exact inverse here. Panda Cat is 6-0-2. A part of all but 1 kill out of that Hunter role for him. Has this full attack speed build online, so the Silver Branch converts into a ton of extra power for him. And chat's been kind of coming at Panda Cat all weekend, right? Talking about, you know, how he's been riding along with PBM. Well, this game, Panda Cat's doing a lot of the heavy lifting.
And this is actually something earlier I was looking at it because Cyclone went crit so early and still is going for the crit with that Wind Demon purchase he just got. He's not necessarily the quote-unquote tower killer you expect. He's still a hunter and he's still got a lot of that attack speed and just physical damage that is going to help burn it down. But it's not the same as what you see out of Panda Cat. I mean, Panda Cat has gone structure killer extraordinaire with this build and the way that it goes with the chins, with the attack speed that comes in alongside it. And so they're able to clear up way more towers than Radiance did with their Fire Giant. And one of those was just because Panda Cat happens to be able to shred it. They had a couple of minions there to help shred the backdoor protection. But again, it's just gold on the map for them. Even if you don't get that second Phoenix to really knock the crutches out from under Radiance, you do keep them limping because that right Phoenix, they have to worry about those fire minions. Even though they're pretty far back on the right-hand side, they're always a present threat. You know that you're down in gold. You know the itemization, the relics are now going to start favoring Ghost. You have to wait, honestly, at this point for a Phoenix defense or another really good Fire Giant fight because this Tier 2, I don't know, I'm a little timid to try and put my cards on the table here.
Ghosts are moving in first. Radiance have fallen back underneath this Tier 2 tower, and it's starting to melt quickly, so Ghost burned through it, but dang, the damage of Cyclone Spin started to hurt. Mike's got to rethink whether he wants to run face first into that or not. So we were questioning, you know, the value between Panda Cat and Cyclone Spin, but Cyclone Spin's damage is certainly there. But Ghosts are falling back for now. They don't have a ton of time left on this FG. They'll grab Pyro. Looks like they might even be considering a reset here at this point and maybe getting ready for this next fight.
Yeah, I'm going to watch specifically what Mike decides to pick up. He doesn't have a lot of physical protection. I mean, he went a spear first off to go into this loadout. It might help him find a pick onto someone like Benji. He uses the cavalry charge to get on out of there. He only has that spectral armor to keep him alive.
Big Kraken lands onto Benji. Just how big it is remains to be seen, I suppose, as Benji shakes it off, walks away pretty easily, and the rest of Ghost Gaming head back towards Fire without that ultimate, at least for now. We'll see if it comes back up in time for any more action. I mean, we're 45 seconds away from the FG, so not a huge deal here at this point. As Ghosts are going to take their reset and Gore. Now that Radiance find themselves, 10,000 gold down here in the late game, and Sam is starting to get some good Odin cages. We thought there might be another Phantom coming in, but it's just the one for Benji. I mean, what's Radiance's way back into these next fights? Do you want them to contest this next FG or wait for defense?
Oh, the last fight, I think two things. One is they get that Raul before Kraken comes up, so they know they have maybe more secure than Ghost around this Fire Giant in the next 10 seconds, so they could try to work with that window. But also, they were just so disjointed in the last fight. I mean, Benji was one place, Aurora was one place, and Adapting was one place. And they didn't seem like they really knew what they wanted to accomplish in that team fight. I think if they isolate a target, they figure out who they want to go for here, Adapting can go in, find that pick, the target that he's meant to, and then the follow-up damage, the follow-up lockdown, should be there for Radiance to start a fight favorably for themselves. But the longer they wait, I think the just better it gets for Ghost. It gets Sam into an interesting position, although right now he's doing a red buff. He gets Fine OK into an interesting position as this set to maybe find a through line to the back line, and it gives Sam that opportunity to get some lockdown and pair it with that Kraken again.
Well, they're in position now, aren't they? Ghost have Captain Twig's ultimate, but the Thorns Benji used is still on cooldown, so we're seeing the trade make some sense for now, but they only have 20 seconds to capitalize on that window. So Ghosts have the Fire Giant. It's lost about a quarter of its health, but Ghosts have reset it for now. They're looking for the fight instead. Mike has been pushed in, so Sam responds with a great cage. Kraken onto Benji again, but Benji shrugs it off this time, takes ult into the back line, looking for Twig. Ross Knight comes through, doesn't do that much damage, but the abduct from Mike is better. Twig uses that for an easy kill. Aurora falls as well. The snipes coming out from Panda Cat, not particularly needed this time, and once again Radiance are left without their front line, but a big field of blood means Twig is suddenly low. Rather, Mike is, but he uses the res to save himself. Fine OK moving in and helping to gobble up Tings. Panda Cat gets Cyclone Spin, and just like that, it's a DSI core. Just like that, Ghosts have won game one.
I mean, I don't know if you blinked there. I did at 1 second, just blinked for the last two kills, and when I opened my eyes, they were gone. I mean, instant delete from Ghost Gaming on that one. And it's just a small misstep. I think Benji Aurora, again, maybe a little too aggressive on that. And just like you have Panda Cat in position to shred towers, he's also really good at shredding tanks with that kind of build, and that just led into an easy frontline shred. Unfortunately, there, Adapting can't do much on his own. And maybe the lack of beads, having that Sunder kind of hurt his ability to get to the backline and feel safe doing so, because all of the other games that we've watched from Radiance, he's been the setup machine. This game, he did it a couple of times early on, but we didn't really get to see it towards the late game.
This was a struggle here for Radiance. It looked good at the beginning, but then Ghost started to come through in that mid to late. And how about Panda Cat showing that the ROM hasn't gone away just yet? It'll be a quick break. We'll be right back with the desk and then game two.
Into the night, city lights are dancing, slowly falling apart. The shadows causing an outbreak of wishing upon a star. This time I'm feeling stronger, and I know I can do better. The shadows causing an outbreak. I'm turning the light, we're gonna
the meaning of cruel.
Let the heavens rage!
Oh, what a year it has been here in Season 7 of the SPL. The chair ads have been abound. We go from writing crossword puzzles early on to wearing spacesuits upside down, and then Ramsey joins us. It's been a fantastic year, and I don't have anything all that wild and over the top, but it is time, I think, to pass on the crown. I don't know if she's going to let this happen at all. Are you going to let it happen? No, you want to sniff it and eat it? Look, I made a little there we go, kind of. No, you don't want it? Well, this is chaos. This is live broadcast, ladies and gentlemen. All right, we're going to eat the crown. That counts for something. Ramsey, I'm passing the crown on to Ramsey. She is the chair queen, the Maxnomic chair queen here in the SPL. I will be here for chair ads in the future, don't you worry. But it seems like the time is right that the little munchkin gets her moment in the sun. Needforseat.com, the SMITE Maxnomic chair. Make sure to go check it out. You'll get an in-game award as well. All right, I'm going to put you down, and you're going to be nice and good with your with munching on your crown there later on. All right, Mifflin, let's re-ground ourselves in game number 1 here. We're Radiance. They come out to a roaring start. It looks like this one might be over quickly if Radiance can kind of keep that momentum going, but Ghost was able to withstand.
Yeah, it felt like Radiance came in with the game plan, which was that early game aggression, be it around the solo lane, occasionally in that mid. But generally, after the first 2 kills that Radiance pick up, first one and second, it just kind of fizzled out. Adapting slowed down. He wasn't quite able to keep up that exact same pace. I'm sure he was feeling not too much pressure because Sam was having a pretty quiet early game as well. But there was one distinct misplay that comes to mind. The first neutral objective of the match, Radiance goes for the Pyromancer, while they have a pretty sizable lead at this point. It was around 2,000. And Ghost Gaming responds by taking Gold Fury, and that essentially completely evens it up. And from there, it felt like it was a tug-and-war battle, back and forth, but Ghost was coming out ahead almost every single time off the back of the duo lane, Panda Cat and PBM.
Right. Yeah, and you know, these Krakens from Twig weren't necessarily over the moon or anything all that wild, but it was just kind of time and time again the same setup. PBM pulls somebody in, Sam for Soccer stuns somebody, and then there's even just a single-man Kraken from Twig to burst down a lot of that damage. But, you know, Panda Cat goes undying, Twig dies once, Fino K and Sam for Soccer twice. I mean, you're just not going to win a game with numbers like that. And I think it's a far cry, admittedly, Miff, and you sort of mentioned it there, from what we saw from adapting yesterday on this circuit. I mean, he did 8,000 damage, only higher than Sam and PBM, and the initiation factor wasn't necessarily there to bridge that damage gap.
I think it really comes down to PBM picking up the Kepri for himself makes it so hard for adapting to find value in the early game. Surcat being so single-target centric means that Scarab's Blessing is essentially, you can't play against it. Surcat goes in, blinks 2, ultimate 1, well, all PBM has to do is press 4, and all the work you just put in is lost. Essentially, it only gets you some positional advantage around a neutral objective if you're using it to initiate in a team fight in those regards. I think adapting definitely felt that pressure.
Yeah, I think so. We'll see if picks and bans for game number 2 have anything different in store. Ramsey's feeling good. Look, she's been 1-4 on predictions this weekend, but she ate the kibble on the Ghost sign today, so she's happy with how game number 1 went. Remember, this is a Ghost team that throws a lot at the dartboard, and sometimes it's been sticking. You know, that they have this kind of signature play style that they've liked to go to, but they can facilitate that in numerous different ways. Yesterday we saw, what, a Hell Nox composition, something like that for Ghost Gaming. So it's a very hard team to lock down. I don't think Radiance were necessarily prepared for the Odin out of the jungle either. So it's a very difficult team, I think, to draft into. So adaptations will be key from the team with adapting on it. Fine OK is not going to be able to play King Arthur here, maybe even in this set, as the King Arthur banned out in the first wave of bans yet again from Radiance here. Yamoja and Nike both taken away by Ghost. Ghost obviously putting a lot of focus, Myth, in banning out some of those big initiation team fight heavy gots.
Yeah, I think that's smart from Ghost because Aurora really is going to be the difference maker in this set. I think that it's how well is he going to be able to play and match up to PBM out of that support role. But already Radiance makes a small pivot. This Khepri ban means that if Adapting wants to, he can go back to that circuit and already immediately have a much easier time finding some success in the early game. I think that Ghost has figured out that even without having that Khepri, they should be able to win out in these team fights late. Scarab's Blessing was almost never used in the last 2 or 3 team fights because of the strong initiation factor that Sam for Soccer had on that Odin.
It's got to feel good if you're Mike. You know, your Khepri carries enough weight in it that it warrants a ban here from Radiance, but that means Cupid is still left open. A 78% win rate goes by the wayside there in game number 1. Cyclone Spin, not necessarily a poor performance, just the team around him seemed to be crumbling later on in some of those fights. So you give him another chance on that pick, seems to be worthwhile in my mind. There's still a ROM, if that's where Panda Cat wants to go here. There is a window where Ghost Gaming don't necessarily have to sweep that ROM pick in these first 2. And maybe smart Myth to go back to something Fine OK has liked. Yeah, Ramsey perking up for the set here. Maybe the old run back, and now you get the ROM as well. So a similar start to what we saw from Ghost in the picks and bans for Game 1.
I mean, we could just talk about stats from Game 1, right? This ROM went 7-0, so I don't even have to. There's nothing more to it. He went 7-0. The duo lane together went 7-0 and 19. You got to do something different on the side of Radiance to shut it down, and this is already a very smart pivot from them. Persephone is going to control the 3v3 in mid, which means that essentially I don't think Ghost is going to go into that mid 3v3. They don't want to fight around that Grasp of Death. I'd be surprised if we don't see Aurora pick up his pick here. Ghost has shown that they're showing a lot of respect to that Ares, the ability to control these team fights, that damage output that he has. The elongated cripple would be very strong in his set and ROM as well, and would also mitigate Ghost going back to the Odin. So if Aurora wants to, he could pick up the Ares, but instead it's going to be the Guan Yu, which in of itself works as his flex pick. Will it go into the Soul Lane again? Will Aurora pick it up? We don't know, and neither does Ghost.
Yeah, could be one or the other. What a weird world we live in. I'm just thinking here, I'm so used to just seeing the Hercules taken away from Aurora every single game, no matter what. It has not been a factor, really, in these picks and bans, especially against PBM, who also can play that Hercules. So maybe saying something about the way the support meta looks at the moment. Look at this, Mifflin. Ghost Gaming, take the hell here. And this is what they paired with the Nox yesterday. So maybe that's something Radiance have to be mindful of in their last couple of picks. Obviously, you can't, or I suppose you could ban her away here. If you're Radiance, do you think it warrants a ban? I mean, this is kind of Ghost showing their cards with this one pick.
I don't think you need to address the Nox. I think that Radiance can go just about anywhere they want with this ban phase. If anything, Sam for Soccer is where my eyes are going, and it seems like Radiance is along those lines as well. The Odin getting banned out, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Thor followed up with it, or even the Susano as Ghost take out that Bacchus. Interesting. It fits Aurora's playstyle, that aggressive minded, I want to get in first, I want to CC, I want to be able to just continually be aggressive on the enemy ADC. But I want to talk about this Hell pick for a second, Dave. It is a double-pronged attack on Radiance's draft. The speed boost that her heal stance will give to her team is going to make it a lot harder for these Fields of Love to find any sort of effect, and Persephone's Grasp of Death is easily immune by the cleanse as well. I love this Hell pick.
Yeah, that's difficult. I mean, so much of what Radiance want to do with their first 3 picks here is lock down targets for early and often team fighting, Guan Yu, Persephone, and Cupid, for that matter. Hell mitigates a lot of that. That's a great point there, Mifflin. Thor as well is now going to add on to the pile. Sam for Soccer has the ability to turn around some of these fights if there is early lockdown from Radiance that is unable to be cleansed away. Now, this would be something. Bastet has been reserved for only a specific few players here in this phase, but now Adapting's going to get a look.
He is, and I love this pickup. I got to see Ramsey hop up into the camera view for a second there. It was adorable. Bastet has a very strong matchup into Hell. Hell, you need to kill instantly in a team fight. If she survives for 10 seconds into a team fight, essentially Ghost is going to be in the lead just by nature of having Hell in your comp. Bastet's burst potential and the ability to keep that Brawler's V-Stick procced onto multiple people is going to be phenomenal. It's going to make it a lot harder for Twig to perform on this pick. And Dave, you might have been right. Maybe Nox should have been on their minds because that's very strong in a Bastet. If she jumps in, lock her down, can't jump out.
How about the Ardio, though? Does that sway your mind here at all? What do you think this Radiance team is looking to do?
Radiance is looking to engage these fights from a distance, be it through Grasp of Death or Fields of Love, and then have Bastet try and separate himself in the team fight, act as a solo agent. Adapting's going to try and wrap around, potentially pick out the Hell or even the Rom if he can. Outside of that, they've got a very strong disengage potential through Guan Yu and Ardio. So if Ghost does start to win this team fight, if they don't get the initial fight going in Radiance's favor, they should be able to use Ardio to run away, wait for those cooldowns to come back up, and then retry. Whereas Ghost strat is, all right, if this fight lasts any longer than 10 seconds, we're going to win because we've got more healing. And also we've got insane lockdown potential, the ability to initiate fights through Thor or Nox. It's very versatile.
Remember, this was a Ghost draft that struggled early against the Renegades when they tried it yesterday, but eventually there was this timer we had kind of put on that game. Eventually that timer caught up, and Ghost Gaming were able to win that one. A team that's able to flex in the moments where they need to do so. Can Ghost Gaming take the 2-0 lead in the finals? Let's jump in and find out.
Thanks, Dolson and Mifflin. Still Finch, Gore, and Doug here as we move into game number 2. And what a game it is shaping up to be. No Warriors, no Guardians for Ghost Gaming. It's the double Assassin, double Mage composition. And in particularly in the support role, it's this Nox. We saw this comp from them before, Gore. Do you expect it's going to be the same thing? They struggle early, pull it back late, or can Radiance run over them with these strong frontliners they have?
Man, I don't know too much. I think the solo lane, for the most part, should be mostly similar to what it was last game, right? I mean, FidoK was able to handle Benji. No big issues. I mean, a couple of ganks from Adapting did happen over here, but nothing crazy. It didn't get out of hand. The dual lane, I actually think, will have a better time here. I think Ardio, like, when you silence her, a nice big field over there is going to make it difficult for Aurora to have a really big impact. And, I mean, help Adapting if he comes over, because he's going to be jumping into a silence and a lockdown. I mean, Bastet's not really going to be able to gank to help them out. If Ghosts do fall behind, it'll have to be on the right side of the map. Otherwise, I think this left side is going to be enough. I think this Nox could actually work out really well this time.
Yeah, Ardio is one of those gods that does not like to play into the Nox, man. She gets really punished by the root and the silence, so I'm right there with you. And you just saw the big change there that I think has Nox coming back in here to more players. That first ability, that Shadowlock, able to hit those minions now, and Mike already with a bit of pressure, just a bit off with that root. But with that minion wave pressure there, I doubt they could have gotten more aggressive anyway. Meanwhile, Twig forced to deal with Persephone in the middle lane, and Twig is already out of mana, so there's a mana pot to help him out a little bit though as Sam joins him in mid.
This is one of those weird and kind of interesting matchups. Like, theoretically, the push should be on the side of Ghost's duo lane, and Hell ultimately shouldn't be too threatened. I think, you know, the first few levels where she's really mana hungry is where she's most susceptible to a lot of that damage, and so Adapting, hanging out in mid, typically what junglers do at this point, but probably really big for them to try and get some of that pressure down. Plus, Bastet's early damage could be enough to try and, well, just hurt Twig a lot in the beginning of this game and make him fall behind. But the problem is, I mean, you could be 6-0 on Hell or 0-6 on Hell, and as long as you make it to a certain mark in the game, you're still going to have some insane healing output.
Yes, they certainly should, right? And that's something Raids got to make sure they deal with. Though they do have some good applicators, Divine Ruin and Brawlers over there on that side. So we'll see how this Hell matches up to the Guan Yu and Cupid's Sustain in the late game. Even a little tiny bit from Ardio, not to be discounted. So excited to see how Radiance elect to use that in this later game. But Gore, I'm just worried about Ghost's frontline potential later on in this game. They've got good CC, right? And that can make up for some of those deficits if you can get a pick early on in your fight. But when Guan Yu is rampaging on the backline with his ultimate, right, or there's a Grasp of Death back there and Adapting's using that to leap in, I worry if they're not going to be missing a more traditional Guardian at that point.
And I'm looking at Phoenix's, you know, when you're trying to siege, yes, Fine OK is going to be a little tanky. PBM will build tank items and, you know, be able to have a pretty massive health bar, but there's just a certain point where you don't have that same effect. I was laughing about it yesterday, me and Inbound, when we were watching one of those games. It was when Aurora as Cabrakan just kind of stood under the Phoenix for like 5 seconds straight, and his health bar didn't budge. And we were laughing because that's like the best part of being a support player and being in that role, is when you hit that point where you just don't care about damage anymore. Nobody can take you down, and you feel a different level of invincible. You don't really get that when you're playing a mage. So I think PBM, there's a lot of capabilities for this team, but all of their wins will have to come off the back of a fight, whereas like you said, Radiance not only can just run you down with a strong front line, but also can just run down your tower lines if they win a fight, so you can't afford to take really any big risks that could lose you and deicide you.
No, they certainly can't. As Fine OK, who's hit 5 early, put a little bit of pressure there on Benji, but nothing too serious. As we rejoin this duo lane, where I thought we might see a little bit more action. It's mid, actually, where things are happening. Good ult there from Tings, but not enough. Captain Twig gets first blood for Ghost Gaming, as the Thor-Hell combo has too much pressure.
You know, and I brought it up for myself, honestly, just for a moment like this. Sam yesterday said, not that happy with my performance overall. Feels good to 3-0 despite that, right? And it's like, yeah, you know what? We got a 3-0. That's fantastic. I did not like how I played, and it was on that Thor game that I think a lot of people were questioning it. There was a lot of moments where we were just like, man, Sam's not really hitting the mark we would expect. Like, the Thor damage late game really did come together, and you could see Ghost kind of mesh the way they had intended to, but it took them a little while, right? Like, there was a period of that game that was maybe the comp, and also a little bit of warm-up, I feel like, for the players, even though they were at the third and final game for their set. I think this time he's definitely a little bit more into it, right? He's hitting these stuns, he's a little more proactive, especially considering what we just saw the Odin. I want this pace for Sam to continue because it feels good for Ghost.
And you gotta remember, both these teams, I believe, are already a lock for either first or second, but the winner gets first. And with SSG kind of on the outside looking in here, Gore, don't you think that puts so much of a premium on being first? You get to potentially avoid SSG if they end up in that third slot, and then take whoever's fourth instead. There's a lot on the line here, so I think Sam's right, kind of to your point, that he needed to step it up a little bit more. This is a huge set for them to potentially make that world's path for them even easier down the line. And there's Aurora blinking in, trying to make things harder, but Grasp of Death makes a flyby, hits nothing, and instead Ghost Gaming get to walk away easy. Mike now with the root onto Aurora. The hammer is there as follow-up, but with adapting showing back up, I don't think Ghost can afford to heavily commit, but they're going to need that combo to connect, or I don't know how Radiance are going to win this one.
Yeah, that is the unfortunate nature of this, especially with the silence being able to come through right afterward. If you miss that combo much like that, no matter what kind of aggression you try to apply afterward, PBM will literally just say no. And it's a big no. It's a nice giant circular no that lands on the map. And it's just so unfortunate, I think, to be Radiance in that kind of position. Big man Tings, and this is the same thing we've said for Twig in the past, those ults for Persephone are probably the most important thing. Your damage is pretty solid outside of that. Your passive is awesome. Having those plants set up before a fight can be, you know, the turning point in your favor for a team fight. But if you miss your ult, it doesn't mean anything. Everything else in your kit really does fall apart. You might get some good poke damage, but you need those ults to connect.
Well, where are we going here, Sam, as he's gone to the sky? The Anvil of Dawn. The answer was mid-camp. Got to take care of those dastardly camps over there, but in all honesty, Sam ults doesn't see an opportunity. It just joins his squads for some farm afterwards. So Gore, talk to me a little bit about what you hope that these two teams play to. Like, what should Radiance's game plan be to fit this draft? Are they dive heavy? Are they counter initiation? What's the game plan they're looking for?
Honestly, I like the idea of kind of a fakie. Like, you go in, you try to get the cooldown, specifically from PBM. Get rid of that silence first, and then your engage should be able to come through. Other than that, their CC isn't really that heavy. I mean, FineOK, his version of CC is kill you dead. Maybe there's a couple of slows. The stun
Might be
from
their whole
Sam
team.
is going to exist, but there's not a whole lot outside of that giant silence, the lockdown that PBM has, and the wall from Sam. So if you can just get rid of one of those on an initial engage and then work with, granted a very short, but that small window of opportunity that you have to engage and not feel too detrimented by that silence, that's where Aurora can work. That's where Benji can work. And more helpfully, that's where Adapting can go in without too much of a worry of peel. Try to burn down Twig, get rid of the healer, and then bounce out of there. And honestly, I think that right now, you just kind of have to farm. You have to accept the fact that that window's too small to operate in for a farming phase, and you really need the full team.
I think the Jet's a good way to look at it here for Ghost. These pieces can align to a great whole, but I wonder if the whole thing might topple down once one leaves. Aurora with the Blink 2-man stun! The Grasp of Death does connect onto Twig, but Hell has the cleanse. That's easy for him to make it out. Meanwhile, Sam strips away the red buff. Adapting recognized it, cut off his escape wall, forced Adapting to use the beads. There's the root as well, so Sam uses his own beads, but it's too much damage from Adapting. He gets the kill, but dies for it in trade. So it's 1-for-1, jungle for jungle, though Ghost steal away the red buff.
I mean, just being able to get in there, I think good for Adapting to show some proactive play. Unfortunate for Adapting that exactly what we expected to happen to Bastet when she got proactive happened to him, right? I mean, it's just so difficult for him to be the player that they've wanted in the last couple of days, or not days, games. Like, when we were watching yesterday, when we were watching Friday, it has been difficult to not talk about him, and now it's so easy to glance over it.
Well, every one of these Radiance fights start with Aurora getting a 2-man RDO stun. That is not the easiest thing to do. It's not a ton of range on that stun, and it just hasn't mattered yet, right, Gore? I mean, it's only 9 minutes into this game, but Tings has not had an impactful ultimate yet in this game, right? I mean, the first one whiffs out of the window, classic. The second one gets immediately Hell cleansed when only that tether lands. Yeah. They're going to need a bit more to show out of this Persephone. She's supposed to be a top value pick, and it hasn't been there just yet.
It feels unfortunately easy for Ghost Gaming to just get out of there, right? Like, I mean, if you're big man Tings, yeah, you're not going to hit 100% of your ults. Nobody ever is, unless you're having one of the most stellar days of Smite that you've ever had. But you're coming into this hoping that 90% of them are going to connect, right? In some way or another. But if you don't hit Twig, even if you, like you said, just get those tethers, he's just going to cleanse it. Not just himself, it's big enough that usually they can group up and anybody in that ult's going to be able to walk away. And knowing that you have to connect in order to have that be effective is a little more stressful, especially when these angles, it's a great ult, but it's a little slow in terms of flight, so you might not always get the hit you want. Those will be crucial for those Fire Giants, for those Fury fights, but as of right now, it just hasn't been enough to pivot this mid lane in their favor. It's still only a little under a 2,000 gold lead, but Ghost Gaming are steadily rising and using this lead effectively.
Sam again takes an ultimate, and this time he lands onto Aurora. Good self-peel coming from Aurora, but now he's stuck between three. There's the Nox lockdown, Aurora falls, but Sam gets hit by the Grasp of Death. We said Tings needed to show up, and that was it. Now Cyclone Spin drops the Fields of Blood. Twig is the next member. That's in some trouble. Adapting can't do the damage to Tings. Takes matters into his own hands. A double kill from this Persephone, but Ghost Gaming unable to find a return kill. That was the kind of fight Radiance needed, where Tings got big value.
Yeah, I mean, perfect for Tings to be able to pick up those kills, but even better that you only lose Aurora and all of that. I mean, that's exactly what you want in a team fight if you're Radiance, right? Aurora, who's already got a admittedly tough matchup, even though he's been finding a lot of these cool 2-man stuns, he hasn't been able to do much outside of that. Sets up 2 kills, or at least the opportunity for Radiance to rotate in and find those. Good ult usage and burn down from Adapting as well, just to seal the deal, and then nice Fields of Love to make sure that Ghost Gaming can't continue afterward. I think Radiance tackled that and approached it the way they need to, and are a little lucky that FineOK wasn't there. I feel like, appropriately, Set is just kind of the janitor, right? If everyone's low enough, and let's say low enough is 60% or less health, he's going to go in and find some kills.
Nice setup again from Polar Bear Mike. This Nox is starting to seem pretty annoying from my perspective here. Radiance struggling to deal with it, but we saw in that last team fight that if you're engaging on Aurora and not dealing with him quickly, then Radiance can overcome it. The Ghosts move over towards Pyromancer. They're already burning it quickly, and Radiance are either not nearby or at least not thinking they can handle it. Now a little bit of poke coming in from Adapting. but it's not enough. Ghost Gaming basically sneak away the Pyromancer there, and Radiance unable to contest. So a small little advantage starting here for Ghost, but not a lot of space between these two teams at this point.
No, I think that last fight from Radiance, it really did help pull a lot back in their favor, and it kind of showcased to Ghost that you aren't just going to get away with it every single time. Sam has been going for these ults inside that small Harpy camp right next to the mid lane, and hasn't really found huge plays. Once he dunked over to the right-hand side of the mid lane, and once he dunked now onto Aurora, ended up losing his life for it. I'd like to see more proactive play from the Angela Dawn.
There's the snipe from Pandacat. He had to go up to avoid the trouble. Mike is here to provide some peel, but Adapting jumps over at Aurora with another two-man stun, forces the relics out, but Mike is safely on his own side of the map. The Grasp of Death does root, but there is no follow-up. But take a look at the relics, especially Pandacat. Beads Aegis down, Sunder down there for Mike, and they both had to use ultimate, so that is some resources that Radiance managed to strip away.
Yeah, knowing you can get aggressive. Sam walks back over towards mid lane, but honestly, with the positioning of Aurora and Cyclone, I kind of would have liked him to sit in the Gold Fury pit, maybe find an ult over here. Cyclone especially, at least burn those beads, maybe get his Aegis as well. Make sure that Radiance are just hurting going into the next fight, and then all of a sudden you can start putting pressure onto something like the Gold Fury and really forcing Benji, Fine OK to make some big plays, big rotations, but also recognizing that you know Radiance can't really win in any of these big team fights. They don't have any of the big team fight ults available.
No, not after that little engagement, right? So Radiance may be playing things a little bit slower here. And Gora, I like the point that you made. Maybe we need a bit more of these proactive ults from Sam, or at least ones that can actually hit home. I mean, we've seen Sam go out to the air several times. Once he landed on mid Harpies, once he had to come right back down, and then the dunk onto Aurora that ended up costing them a 2-for-1 team fight. So they still haven't been the greatest Anvil of Dawns from Sam just yet. He's still got plenty of time, though, I think, to make this Thor pick really work for them here in this game. So he's looking for him, but just hasn't quite found a big one yet.
I almost feel bad because there's so much pressure I think that is easy to put on Sam, but it's just because he's been like the pinnacle of excellence in the jungle so far this year that it's very difficult to then be like, oh, also Sam, like I guess you can miss those now. It's like, no, you need to be the one going, because as much as we see the rest of Ghost kind of step into those shoes, I mean, Pandacat had a really couple of great games, same thing for Twig. It really has been a driving force from the jungle so far, at least all of Phase 2 for Ghost Gaming. And so, you know, uncharacteristically, I mean, 0, 2, and 3, not able to find a lot of these good ults so far, means that Sam has a little bit more of a window to open and jump in.
The ADCs trade ultimates, and Pandacat has Adapting waiting for him when he lands, but Adapting blows Pandacat up. The ultimate stem into the leap is too much damage, but Fine OK is here for revenge, hunting down the cat. Sam for Soccer dies in trade, though, so far, a 2-for-1 in favor of Radiance, and what more can they do now that Benji has arrived? Fine OK is low, getting some peel, though, from Captain Twig's mid-hell. Benji doesn't have the damage, and Fine OK lives, but this is the kind of fight Radiance need. A 2-for-1 helps them turn the momentum.
Yeah, and even if Adapting dies there, I think it's worthwhile just because you not only get that 2-for-1, but so far, I mean, you've got the lead. You can afford maybe a little bit of farm loss overall in the way things have been going. And you hear a couple of things at the very end, I think some sound cues that are very important because it showcases how this has been going. But PBM not quite connecting on all of these abilities, the lockdown from this Nox, especially now that he has that Stone of Binding. The only things that are going to make him feel very potent and strong from this is if that lockdown comes through. And I had said it earlier, but as long as you're playing around those cooldowns well, then Radiance don't have as much to worry about. Once that silence is gone, go on in Benji, go in Adapting, do whatever you want because you have such a wide window to work with and so many squishy targets to tear apart.
And Cyclone Spin's doing a really good job of forcing Pandacat up into that ultimate. It only resulted in the kill that first time, but remember last time, the time just before this, he had to use Beads and Aegis to narrowly escape. When he goes up, everyone knows where he's landing, and Radiance has done a good job being there to punish him afterwards. And as you said, they're playing around the somewhat limited CC there from Ghost, not quite like what Radiance have at their disposal with Grasp of Death and Fields of Love and this big ultimate from Benji as well, right? I mean, they've got a ton of tools, and Ghost haven't fallen all the way behind yet, but they got to make sure they're being mindful of the way Radiance are counter-initiating into these fights.
I'm a little nervous, though, Finch. I'm just having deja vu to watching this yesterday, right? You see this comp come through. It doesn't look like it's doing too hot in the first 15, 20 minutes, and then it just pops off towards the end and wins the game.
It certainly could.
I mean, you know, testing the waters, right? Seeing what can we do around the Gold Fury. Once it turns into a 5-on-5, it just feels like a different Ghost Gaming, even with these 5 comps, just because their damage output's going to be high. I think Radiance have to be careful here.
Go start this 3 up first. But as you said, perhaps Radiance the ones who need to be a bit careful. Or does get rooted, but if it's just the Nox poke, he doesn't have to worry too much about that. Not a ton of damage coming from PBM, especially with the build that he's gone up to this point. But Radiance, the team that is still lurking near the Fury. In fact, they've got Cyclone Spin starting it up. A lot of resetting here, no one hard committing, but it looks like Radiance have decided now is the time. Fury down to half, they drop it again. Aurora blinks in, but immediately the Silence is waiting, and the ultimate from Tinks clips the wall. Doesn't get a ton of value there. Fino-K now taking the opportunity to move in, but he's been rooted, adapting, dunks in with a bunch of damage from his one, and it's Fino-K in trouble, narrowly avoiding the Field of Love, but Aurora there to clean up the kill, but maybe now he's a bit too far forward. Panda Cat looking for the snipes from range, doesn't get any kills, and Radiant Score are still holding on. Now they can sustain around this Guan Yu and look to re-engage.
That's the downside. You have the hell to keep you in the fight, but Guan Yu's on the other side, keeping all 5 strong for Radiance. You have to get aggressive here. You can't really back down, I think, of your Ghost, because this Gold Fury is important. Still have that silence. They have the lockdown, but Benji might be able to see that as a go. They're waiting for adapting. Once those cooldowns are back up, he's going to be able to find a pretty easy pick here.
Man, we're seeing why Odibo is so annoying, though, huh? Both Hunters shooting all these extra procs off through the fight, and despite the fact that Ghost have reduced numbers, they still seem pretty confidently to be sticking around. Radiance now have all 5 members. They're all back over half, looking relatively healthy, so they're going to move into the Gold Fury again. Now, Fino-K is back out and ready to fight again, but this Fury lower and lower. There's the silence! But Radiance secure the objective. 2-mana wall stun from Sam, but Tings has another ultimate, and this one much better for the disengage. Radiance should be out at this point.
I think we get to see the essence, and this is what worries me. That Sunder, that Frenzy from PBM, when those are active, when the fight is going on in its crucial moments, there's a lot that Ghost Gaming are going to be able to do to just shred you down. If Guan Yu's not there, if that Artio healing, even though it's small, is not there, then I don't know that Radiance get to win that fight the way they do. I think it falls apart for them, and we get to see either Fino-K, Sam, maybe Panda Cat pick up a few more kills. But because of that healing, at least as of right now, it's enough to keep them level and give them that Gold Fury. I think as the game goes on, they have to be worried about that. But again, it fits almost perfectly with the theory of what you need to. If you can bait PBM into using one or both of those relics early, and just fall back, which again is easier said than done, then all of a sudden you're out of the fight, they're out of a relic, and you can control the pace of the game for the next, foreseeable future.
Radiance do hold a very small lead, but we're 20 minutes into this one. So that little bit of control not going to be too big of a difference maker in this one. Let's take a look around at some of these builds. Both teams have to deal with a strong healer on the other side. That's why you see the Brawlers there for Ghosts. Not a ton available to them as Radiant start up this Pyromancer. Mike is nearby. His silence is out there, but won't be enough to steal this away. Radiance get the objective easy. Meanwhile, Pestilence Brawlers, Divine Ruin, full upgraded Ankh on the other side. Radiance are looking to limit what this hell is going to be able to do for sustain.
And it feels like the easy way to control, right? I mean, Twig, if they don't have this hell during part of that fight, if they're able to kill them off early on, who else is going to go in on Ghost? I mean, they were all way too low to try and fight that. Twig was the only reason they were able to hang around. They don't have enough tanks to really withstand that onslaught on their own. And so they're reliant on Twig's ability to survive through all of this. Maybe not something you always want to bank your safety on, but definitely something that is going to be crucial for them here in the teamwork. And so that Ankh, if they can get the through line right to this hell, it's going to come up big.
All the ultimates available, all the relics as well, as Radiance try to burn down this mid-tier 1. Twig steps up, though, shows that hell's damage not too bad to go along with some decent healing, as he completely negates that Bone Rush damage that just come out from Tings. Radiance did this yesterday, I believe, right? This Brute Force mid-tier 1, and it ended up hurting them. They're looking for it again here. The Bone Rush damage lands on the Panda Cat again. Adapting is lurking off to the side. The Minion Wave has made its way in, but Cyclone Spin can't follow it. So there's Aurora blinking in for the two-man stun. Benji responds with his own ultimate, adapting right behind it to try and limit Twig. But Twig has Aegis, Twig survives, and Tings is alone in the backline. Radiance left their backline just alone, and that means adapting and Tings both get melted. Now the collapse can come onto Cyclone Spin as well. It doesn't quite connect there as Final K retreats, but this dive from Radiance score, it's so suspect. Ghost feasted on adapting and Tings.
I mean, just a perfect split for Ghost in that case, right? You get two members of the backline, nice, easy targets that are easily locked down for you, and you're able to get back there. And Sam, I love his pathing. He's just trying to run away and save his life, but he pulls Big Man Tings in that passive away from the fight even further. So there's nothing that Persephone is adding to the damage that Benji or Aurora can do, and so it just takes away, as you had said, pretty much anything that Radiance could do to fight back. And that's the second time this weekend they've tried to brute force a tier 1 in mid. That's the second time this weekend. It's just not worked out for them. And that's the glare. I mean, Ghost, they don't mind sitting under the tower. They want you to fight like that. In fact, they're going for a fire.
What a turnaround, all from that mid call. Fire Giant, all 5 members of Ghost. They get the 2 picks in mid, and they defend their tier 1 if we want to remember the stakes there in that fight, right? You gotta throw everything to the winds for that mid tier 1, and now Ghost are in incredible control here of this game. They're only up 2k gold score, but there's still 4 towers for them to grab from the side lanes to extend this lead further, and Radiance might just have to bunker down and play some defense.
Yeah, I think you could very easily hold a tier 2 here. Tier 1s might not be as worthwhile. I think Panda Cat's going to be able to shred them fast enough that ultimately you might just get some poke out onto Ghost Gaming, but they have a hell. Poke means nothing to them. They don't care if you are able to throw out a little bit. In fact, honestly, it might just be the go button. If you step up too far forward, that's an easy target for PBM to try and lock you down. So a couple of tier 1s that are standing. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to push like left, get those both tier towers, the tier 1 and the tier 2, and then either try to find mid Phoenix, maybe go for left Phoenix here. They've got 3 minutes to work with on this Fire Giant. Plenty of time for them to swing things in their favor.
Let's see if Ghosts want to take this Primal, and if Radiance are willing to heavily commit for it. Radiance have all 5 members here, as do Ghosts. So we might have yet another 5-on-5, but this time Ghosts have the Fire Giant to go along with their health sustain, to go along with the self-sustain from the set and the ROM. So Radiance can't want to heavily commit to this one. They don't want to let the Primal go down for free. Benji and Aurora are up front and contesting, and that's forcing Ghost to reset the objective. They do move forward. Polar Bear Mike pulls it again. Sam goes up with the ultimate. He's looking for a target to dunk down on, and he goes right over to the left to look for adapting. So far, he wins the trade, but Sam gets locked down. Fields of Love is there, and Tings with another grasp of death into the backline. Doesn't find much, but Radiant's still winning the fight anyway.
I mean, being able to have now the numbers advantage on your side, tank advantage on your side, and knowing, one, Anvil of Dawn's off the table, but that a lot of the ults were used. I mean, Mike used his, now they're going to be able to get aggressive.
Blink, 2-man stun from Aurora again. So far, the RDO looking good for him as they lock down Mike. Cyclone Spin gets the kill, and suddenly Radiance with some signs of life here. The snipes from Panda Cat do connect, but they aren't enough damage, and Fino K is in trouble. Aurora gets another, and that's now 3-for-0 in favor of Radiance. What a bounce back around the Primal Fury fight into a team with full FG.
Now, this is a draft on the side of Ghost that is one that you could maybe write off as a test draft, right? They used it once yesterday. It was kind of shaky, but still got them a win. I think we're seeing a better adaptation to this draft from Radiance. And it's just unfortunate. I mean, if Sam lands that dunk onto adapting, he probably gets the kill and gets out of there. The fact that it's just off the mark gives that turnaround potential for Radiance, gives them that Primal Fury. As you had highlighted, it wipes out 3 members worth of Fire Giant. And now they have little time to play with. I mean, 2 minutes until the next Fire Giant, but they're the ones aggressing. This tier 2 on right is about half health. It's a lot of gold that they can put in their pockets right here if they want to aggress into that one. Otherwise, strip up the jungle. Take what you can. There's a Pyromancer available. You'll still find leads elsewhere. Turn this into about a 5,000 gold lead in your favor. Go finish off some items, maybe upgrade relics if you have any that you want, and just let Ghost Gaming have those last 2 Fire Giant buffs and see what they can do with it.
Man, how often, Gore, do you get Fire Giant on 5 members and then you're down 3k gold afterwards? This Grasp of Death connects, though, and Mike is the target. There's the CC from Aurora, and Tings making me look silly with another kill, so Mike goes down. But Ghost are going to trade this tier 2 tower. They burn the one in left. Meanwhile, Radiance burned the one in right. So Ghost takes some backs. They should be here in time to defend this Phoenix. And I think Radiance recognize that. They're going to take a bit of a reset here. This time, Gore, still the owners of a 3K gold lead, though.
Yeah, both hunters have similar builds at this point, but Panda Cat still had that Fire Giant buff, so being able to shred down towers, it's maybe the perfect person to have survive with that, and gives them that little bit of a gold deficit chunk down from Ghost, right? They equalize a little bit more just to make sure it's not a runaway game from Radiance. I mean, 27 minutes in, 4,000, 3,000 gold. It's still a significant chunk for Radiance and definitely an advantage, but it's not the runaway lead that we're used to. I mean, we've seen games in 28 minutes in. The fact that they're this close is honestly impressive for Ghost, considering the draft realistically should be leaning for them falling further behind.
You're right about their lack of frontline hurting them, and Ghost is struggling in that department. But look where Sam is. He's the absolute bottom of the player damage chart score. And I mean, we've seen it, right? I mean, he hasn't been hitting a whole lot of ults. He's 0-4 up until this point. They're going to need more from the defending world's MVP if they want to win this finals. But that's a good start. Wall over the wall is enough to stun Aurora and bring him down to half, but not enough for any pick. And that means Ghost Gaming can still step in to fight, but Radiance have everyone here and healthy.
What Ghosts really need is for Aurora and Benji to do pretty much what they did last game, right? Get a little too far forward without the rest of the team, a big silence to lock them down, and then just Panda Cat's existence with this build should be able to help get rid of one of them. The downside is, as much as we would like to meme it between games and looking back at it, without that Kraken damage to initially get Benji started off, they might not be able to burn him as fast. He might actually be able to make it through a lot of these engagements without stress, much like right there.
He does seem rather comfortable, doesn't he? 0-5, so hasn't been completing the kills, but the sustain and the initiation have all been there from this Guan Yu. Mike moves forward, doesn't get the 2-1 combo this time, so retreats a bit further back. Remember, Radiance have a 4K gold lead. That's not nothing, but it isn't backbreaking either as Aurora moves in first. Blink into the backline, but now he's in trouble. But Grasp of Death, so much better this time, coming out from Tings. That hits everyone, and Benji there to follow up. Doesn't get a stun off the ultimate, but meanwhile Mike gets the lockdown onto Aurora. They don't have the damage for the kill just yet, but they do have plenty of healing. Adapting leaks in, does find the big damage off the jump, but now Fine OK is right on top of him. The slows are stacking, and Adapting falls. Sam dunks in as well, and that locks down Aurora for Twig to get the damage and goes suddenly on top. 2-0 in this fight. Benji running for his life, but Mike has the root, has the lockdown, and Sam gets the kill. 3-for-0 in favor of Ghost.
Oh, a good wall, but a better jump from Big Man Tings keeps him alive. But that tier 2, no, they ignore it, Finch. They're just going to keep going. They want these kills more than anything.
Well, this is what their comp is best at, hard diving, and Tings is the one suffering for it now. Fine OK in range, and Fine OK with his 4th kill of the game. That leaves just Cyclone Spin left to defend, and for 20 seconds, I don't think he'll be enough. Ghosts are burning down the middle Phoenix. Ghosts are right on the precipice of finding a 2-0 lead here in your playoff finals. Mike dashes in, Cyclone Spin uses beads in order to retreat. A backup is only 5 seconds away here at this point, but Ghosts are burning the Titan. It's down to half. Mike moves forward, locks down Cyclone Spin, and that is it. Ghost win game 2, and they're 1 game away from being your playoff champs.
Look, I'm going to be honest. There were maybe 3 total fights in that game where Ghost felt like they actually had control. And unfortunately for Radiance, all 3 of them were the most important fights for the game. I mean, that last one, it comes down just a big Kamehameha blast from Mike to really re-engage onto Aurora. He's already pretty low because of an engagement and Panda Cat's damage. And that was just the go button. From that point forward, those tanks just couldn't sustain the way they wanted. This Hell's been integral. Twig played it well. I think everything just meshed when it needed to. And they only needed 1 fight.
So impressive there from him, right? The Nox damage reduction coming up big for him, plus the Hell sustain. They're able to re-engage and run over Radiance in 1 big team fight. And now, Radiance, despite looking good in that game, are suddenly in danger of being eliminated and having to give up that 1st overall seed. We should be able to see, though, they can keep this set going, or if Ghost will win right after this break.
We've been live for about an hour and a half here, and in 1 hour of total game time, Ghost has taken game 1, and now game 2 already. Radiance on the brink of defeat. Ghost Gaming, slow starter here in this one, but end up getting the win. Mifflin's still with me, though, to break things down. Miff, it's not unlike the way that this draft went for Ghost yesterday. Some small early struggles in the early, and then eventually that converts into a big win.
Man, it really comes down to the late game team fight was methodical from Ghost. They drafted to beat Radiance's draft. Every single time we saw a Persephone ult come through, Twig invalidated it with a cleanse. Every single time Aurora wanted to step up, Nox said, by the way, there's a giant silence in the jungle, you can't walk through it. Good luck engaging on my team. And from there, it just felt like Ghost was slowly able to chip away at the defense of Radiance. Radiance establishes a pretty sizable lead in the early to mid game, and Ghost slowly works through it until they eventually, at the tail end, we saw a 4-man Persephone ult from BMT immediately get cleansed, and then they lose the game off of it. I mean, that's tough.
Yeah, imagine hitting that if your big man tings, and then it literally does not matter by the end of it. It's actually right at the front of this clip where Captain Twig cleanses effectively his entire team in that late game fight. So now you're Radiance. You feel like you've maybe gotten a couple of drafts that you're happy with, but the counterplay from Ghost Gaming has just been there. I mean, I hesitate to say anything specifically is a pick ban issue, but it almost seems like nothing is going to work against Ghost Gaming today.
We gotta pray that that ain't the case, man. If Ghost is just that infallible, we gotta be worried about it, but I think there are weaknesses that we're seeing from Ghost, even when they are looking as strong as they are. Finch and Gore pointed out mid-cast that Sanford Soccer, in particular, was having a very hard time finding damage. I think it was about 25 minutes in. Bottom of the chart, 6,900. He's been having a tough weekend. But I think that's within the realm of acceptable losses for Ghost. If you just look at that one particular draft, Sanford Soccer is the sole initiator on this squad. He goes up in the air. It makes it much harder for him to engage when he's the only one that has AoE engage, because Radiance says, oh, Ghost wants to fight us here? Look up. If Sam's up, let's spread out. Let's get out of here. Let's wait for our opportunity, then re-engage. And around these late-game team fights, Sanford Soccer doesn't really have the opportunity to say, well, I used my ultimate. I can't find a dunk. He needs to. He has to go in. So very often he sacrifices his life for a 1 or 2-man dunk.
Do you think that this is the sort of game here in Game 2 that doesn't necessarily come down to one guy who was playing out of his mind? It was more just a draft from Ghost Gaming that worked better into the draft that Radiance had?
I think it really did come down to P's and B's there. I mean, just even the hell into the Persephone is so much of a detriment. Grasp of Death being what we hail as the best ultimate in the game, the best CC tool, one of the best team fight tools, right up there with Fear No Evil, immediately getting invalidated by a 10-second cooldown from Captain Twig. Absolutely ridiculous. And it's not even something that we've seen throughout the entirety of Phase 2. That's essentially new to the playoffs.
Yeah, it's a great point, and something that Ghost Gaming might continue to work on and sharpen that edge moving towards play-ins in the World Championships later on this year. King Arthur continuing to get taken away here by Radiance. Obviously, that carries a lot of weight with it. We've seen what Final K can do with a small lead in the early game on a pick like Osiris. King Arthur carries a similar weight to it there. Khepri once more going to get taken out by Radiance. So the similarities between all potentially 3, but the first 2 of the drafts we've seen so far, is that Radiance have been happy to take this Cupid with their first pick, and then Ghost Gaming have been just fine with that and have taken Set and Rom with their first and second pick in no particular order. Do you think it's time maybe for Radiance to swap up some of that priority?
I don't know where they would go with it. Maybe they're looking to make sure that Adapting finds his comfort picks, but so far Circuit hasn't really been contested. He can get it just about whenever he wants. But I like this small adjustment already. Radiance, every single time they've lost, have changed up their ban slightly. The Khepri came out in Game 2. In Game 3 now, they address it with the Hell, which forces Ghost to make a change. They ban out the Persephone. It seems like Ghost thinks, if you want to beat Persephone, Hell is the best way to do it. Might as well not deal with it if we can't get Hell.
That's right, and the composition that Ghost has been building with that Hell has been Nox in the support. So this will be pretty telling, I think, as far as where Ghost's priorities lie, if they can still, or want to still try to make this Nox work in support, or if they move on to something else. Unchanged in the first 3 picks here. I wonder how much of this as well, and maybe where Radiance's mindset lies around Aurora, and that, you know, you get this RDO, obviously she might have found a little bit of value there in Game 2. Do you want to see the Ardio again, Miff, if you're Radiance, if you're Aurora, or something else that maybe caters? It doesn't matter what my question is. Now I'll pivot. Are you happy to see the Ardio again if you're rooting for Radiance here?
It's an interesting question. I think that Ardio is very strong. What she brings into the team fight, the ability to engage from a range with the Root, or just teleport in with Blink and find a multi-man stun in the bear form. There's a lot that she can bring to your team, but we saw just in the last match that Nox invalidated Aurora. He wasn't allowed to play Ardio like you want to in the early game. That early aggression, that bully out throughout the entirety of the map, Ardio wasn't allowed to play that style. And I think that the stats speak for themselves a little bit here. Ardio's at a 0% win rate, and I'm interested to see Radiance go back to it.
Brought up the Nox, and I think Ghost Gaming realized that if Nox was left open into the next wave of bans, that's probably where Radiance go, because PBM, to your point, has been able to invalidate the Ardio pick on the other side. It's been Cupid, something Guan Yu for Radiance now in 3 straight games, Ardio in the last 2. So we're going to get a look now, Miff, at Nox kind of independent of that Hell pick. Obviously there's some synergy there, but not necessarily having to play off of one another. So it's time for Ghost to start to look towards adapting here and maybe forcing him onto something different, because we've seen a little bit from adapting so far, but there's still a lot of picks for him that could work here in this draft phase still.
Yeah, I think we might see a brand new look from adapting on the weekend here. If Surket's banned out, I would imagine Ghost goes to the Bastet next, or even potentially the Daji. Whichever one of those two that doesn't get banned out, I wouldn't be surprised if we see adapting go towards. But instead, Ghost go ahead and target out BMT with that last ban, that Ra. Very interesting to see that banned out. I would be surprised if Radiance had decided to pick up a 4th healer on this draft already. Anti-heal is going to get a ton of value up against Radiance, Ardio, Guan Yu, Cupid, all of them going to get a huge loss to Divine Ruin or even Brawler's Beatstick. So I'm curious. I'm curious to see what adapting goes here, because I don't feel like Bastet's exactly what you want to play into this Ghost draft.
Right, so Radiance are going to have to play those cards in their next 2 picks. Discordia feels like a bit of a hybrid pick ban for Ghost Gaming here. Obviously, they want Twig to play at 100% win rate in the playoffs so far, but this is a pick that Big Man Tings has leaned on in some big games and has done massive damage numbers. So I think that's pretty good strategy there from Ghost, and prioritize something that has worked for Radiance in the past. Chang'e, though, is now where we move towards here, Mifflin. What do we think about the mid laner for Radiance?
I think Chang'e can work. I'm along the same thought process as Aggro here, in that I don't think Chang'e is essentially a top pick mage. I don't really like her in mid. You're lacking a lot of the burst potential. She brings sustainable, constant damage into these team fights, which does fit the style of Radiance's draft here. Ardio, Guan Yu, Chang'e, some of the best in-combat healing gods in the game. If they want a W key, that's the best 3 that you could have. But they're lacking a lot of confirmable CC. Chang'e's ultimate, at best, can be a 5-second stun, which is ridiculous, but I don't think we've seen one of those in the Pro League since she's come out. You got to hit all 5 targets, an absolutely ridiculous task. And then outside of that, Ardio's going to struggle to get past the Nox, and Guan Yu is your last standing, easy, confirmable CC. And Cavalry Charge into this Ghost draft, you're going to be walking through a ton of damage. I'm worried, man. This Radiance draft is going to have to pull a lead in the early, I think, if they want to win.
So it might be a foregone conclusion here. With all of that being said, do you think this Ghost draft is the one that'll win them their Phase 2 playoffs here on the back of winning the Phase 1 playoffs earlier on in the year?
I think so. I really do. Set, Rom, Nox, all have been working for Ghost already throughout the entire duration of the weekend. Sam for Soccer getting back on one of his comfort picks, and a pick that brings insane counter-engage, insane team fight potential inside of Fear No Evil. I think Discordia is hovering somewhere around a 100% win rate. She just seems to be really hard to deal with, and also brings some fantastic CC into these jungle team fights. This Ghost draft, man, it's strong.
Seems like Radiance have been pivoting just enough, trying to get something to work. Is Game 3 the time where it finally does, or do Ghost Gaming win the Phase 2 playoff finals? We'll jump in to find out.
Thanks again, Dolson and Mifflin. Still Gore here with me and Doug, providing us the view as we move into Game number 3. Ghost are on set point, number 1 seed point. If Radiance can't find a way to get this draft to work, and Gore, some adjustments, right? The Kamazots this time, the Chang'e here as well. Is that going to be enough for Radiance to overcome this Warrior and Guardian-less draft from Ghost?
Man, so Ghosts still have the damage coming out. In fact, maybe even more so with the lack of Hell on their side instead of Discordia coming in. That just means that your damage is going to be even more so. Maybe easier engage because of the Hunbats, but I see a Guan Yu, an RDO, Cupid, all of which, I'll throw Chang'e out there as well, all of which have team heals on their side. And then adapting on the Kamazots that you had just highlighted, a lot of self-sustain that he is going to have in order to keep himself alive in this. It's almost the opposite, to an extent, of what we had last time. Last time, Ghost Gaming, and what I would argue was an essential part of their composition, you lose some of your health, everybody goes down to 50%, you back off, Hell heals a little bit, you come back in. They don't have that this time. If you don't win the fight first try, Radiants are the ones that are going to be full health running into you. I don't know. This one feels a little shaky for the boys.
Yeah, I mean, you were saying to me kind of backstage how that Hell makes Ghost so much more effectively tanky because of all that healing that they're getting. You know, obviously Lotus Crown in the build there as well to provide some actual prots and kind of effectively increasing that collective health pool for that team. They don't have that this time around. Though they did seem to prove that they weren't exactly lacking last game for any kind of front line, right? So maybe they can get away with it here this time too, though they're going to have to do it with substantially less sustain, but maybe a bit more control now, right, with this Unbots there for Sam. That Fear No Evil might make up for what they are lacking.
Yeah, it's that awkward moment where the Thor dunks weren't on point, luckily for Sam, and I feel like we have been ripping on him a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and say he set a really high precedent for himself, and in this game, lucky for him, Fear No Evil's like 3-4 times the size of a Thor dunk, so you're going to be able to hit those a little easier than what you're going to see out of the guy coming down from the sky, so maybe being able to find some picks. You're also against a Chang'e, which, again, maybe has some good counter interactions, good blinks as well to get you out of the game or out of the fight that you might need to. But she's also maybe a little easier to lock down. Again, once you play around those cooldowns, once those are gone, or once PBM starts to rotate in, she's much easier to, I think, tank down here for Radiance than something like the Persephone was.
Well, it's a good thing that Tings does have the blink there. I don't know that any other relic gets him out of there. Of course, trying to get some value out of the fact that Chang'e has all that built-in safety with that second ability, so that's why I think he's picked up this blink. Perhaps for some blink ultimates even, right? A big blink into the Waxing Moon could really set this Radiance team up in a great way and allow adapting to get into that backline a little bit more easy. We'll see if that is the plan for them on the whole. But other than that, a lot of blinks from Radiance, right? I mean, adapting teams in a roar, all equipped with that relic. So looking to try and start this fight off quickly, catch Ghost a bit off guard, and see if they can set up that CC and get everyone in the right position to start burning Ghost down.
See, I'm just, at this point, I don't know if I can even call it. Like, as much as I don't think Ghost Gaming's draft is going to open them up to the same opportunities they had in Game 2 there, I also saw that realistically it was one fight they were able to win, maybe two there, that Radiance tried to force out of them that they were able to really retaliate on. One under that tier 1 in mid, and then one over there near the tier 2 in right. And if you're going to take those as Ghost, I mean, you still just need fights like that. Like, you don't need to consistently win the rest of the game. You don't need an early gold lead, any of that stuff that you would typically want in this kind of team fight, I want to say dictated matchup that you would have. It really is just one really good FG fight with ideally a Phoenix exposed already, and you just run it down mid and win the game.
It is a bit harder to have some confidence in Radiance's ability to force fights after what happened there in Game 2 and Ghost's ability to sort of counter-engage effectively. And they still have a lot of those options with that Apple of Discord and the Fear No Evil and the Silence root from this Nox, and even Pandicat's ability to go hide up in the air for a while. We saw that save him a couple times in Duo last game, so I think that those fears are justified that you might have there, Gore, but Radiance certainly have the tools, I think, this time to show us they can win. Now look at Cyclone Spin. He had his beads forced out. I wonder if that's why PBM is hanging out over here. They certainly have potential to lock down Cyclone Spin if they want it. The Aurora is the early target, but with Mike here alone, not really much potential.
Yeah, there's not a lot of easy, not just lockdown. I think they have that readily available for them when Nox is around. But the follow-up damage, I mean, even with Rom, level 5, you've got decent burst, but I don't know if you're going to be all in all taking down Aurora easily at this point. I think they're waiting for potentially Cyclone Spin or just trying to keep the fear in them to make sure they don't get too aggressive on the side of Radiance, because right now I'm keeping my eyes on adapting. He's got that bat out of hell. He's going to start making some plays, and again, his safety is going to be essential, I think, for him to be able to make the plays that we've kind of been missing all set so far. And once he has that, and once he starts making these rotations and the big ones into like mid or maybe even over onto the right-hand side, that will be game-changing.
Benji successfully invades the blue buff, uses his ultimate to escape because 4 members of Ghost are here, fear no evil, plus the Night Terror, and that will net first blood for Ghost Gaming. They've even got a chance for Benji as well, as Fine OK hunts him down. The set gets a double kill to start off the game. Big Waxing Moon locks down Mike, so Big Man Tings does get the return kill, but Ghost are still here in numbers. The Strife not able to connect with the Waxing Moon there, but Fine OK still on the hunt, adapting, loses out to Samper Sucker. Big Man Tings falls as well, and Ghost Gaming get a 4 for 1.
All right, I'm going to retroactively cover everything I just said. You will struggle on this team with this comp unless you get 4 kills in a team fight early on. I mean, I've never seen them want someone so dead as to what they dumped into Aurora, but good follow-up, good chase down. It almost feels like Game 2 was just a warm-up for Fine OK. I mean, we didn't get to really see that set action until late game last time. Now, he's ready and raring to go immediately off bat. A good Fear No Evil to start things off. I think the stars aligned in that fight for Ghost Gaming to rotate in, and that's the kind of pressure this can bring. Now you're behind as Radiance. This is a composition that if you're behind for Ghost Gaming, you're going to have to look for fights like they did last time, right? Force Radiance to make a bad play. Come into the Tier 1 tower where we can win. Come into the Tier 2 tower on right, where we can win this or put yourself in a bad position. Once you have an advantage, this is a team that can win harder. If they can continue a snowball, win another one of those fights like this, then we're going to start to see the timer slowly go down as to how fast they could win it.
That is a great point, right? I mean, we saw this Ghost Gaming draft's ability to recover last game, but now we might get a chance to see what it can do from ahead as Fine OK continues to bully Benji. And remember, that all starts with Benji successfully solo invading the blue buff, but Ghost Gaming kept up the chase. Radiance overcommit back into the fight a bit, and they end up getting punished. And isn't that been kind of the thread for Radiance all set? I like that they're being aggressive, or I like that they're looking for fights, but they have been forcing and overcommitting to bad fights, and Ghosts have punished them every single time.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, and we got to see it a little bit yesterday. I mean, there was one game where SSG were able to turn it around on them when they're causing a lot of these fights and issues. I think they have to be a little more careful, because right now they want to get aggressive again.
Panda Cat rolling in, has the snipes, first and second connect, but the third won't be enough damage even if it lands. So Cyclone Spin lives. Aurora tries to keep up the chase, even forcing the beads out for Panda Cat. So a nice little win for him there, but shouldn't be any more bloodshed in this duo lane from this point on. That is, I believe, the Frenzy down for Mike, as well as the beads there for Panda Cat, and Radiance get it really at no cost except for the Fields of Love.
I mean, yeah, being able to go in, good bead burning is going to enable them. And I don't know that Panda Cat needed it, although for safety's sake, you always want to use him in that kind of circumstance. And it's just to keep him alive. Ultimately, he's Rom still. Once his ult comes back online, he'll be safe. But this is the perfect window for Aurora. And I think Ghosts know that. And they have Sam lurking over here. It might not be a big play just yet, but if Aurora goes in and is caught out, then they're going to turn this around.
Or this looks like the caught out part. Let's see about the turnaround. Good two-man stun from Cyclone Spin. May have narrowly saved Aurora's life there, but kind of as you alluded to, I don't know how much more work Aurora's going to get to do over there. Ardio does not like playing into the Nox. Listen, no one does, but Ardio, who so desperately needs to get in close, right, can struggle against the Silence Field and the Root.
See, what's crazy is that sentence, like, no one does. You don't just mean, like, God matchups. I think you just mean, in general, like, player base, people don't like playing into Nox. I feel like Radiance, especially in Renegades yesterday, maybe not too happy about having to deal with that. And it's something that is bizarre to me, but also interesting, right? I like seeing that PBM has been playing with this, bringing back the Fenrir, right? We haven't seen as many assassins over there. The Warriors have kind of waned away from this duo lane and just kind of found their home in their solo lane. lane, respectively. But the fact that PBM, of all people, is really willing to try out some of these more bizarre and very niche style picks, it's opened up Ghost to a different strategy, which is exactly what you want to see, not just around playoffs, but realistically, I mean, if you're going to be one of the top 2 seeds to Worlds, you want to have that in your pocket, knowing that you could pull it out in, say, a very big best-of-5 set, much like this one.
It's working for them here, isn't it? As there's the blink ult from Sam for Soccer. Teams makes it out of there alive, but Fine OK is still hunting. Makes it over the wall out safely, and Mike ends up with the kill credit. Fine OK tried to back, but Adapting's on the way. Look at the skewer damage as Adapting takes half his health from that one ability. The apple lands onto Aurora to keep him safe, but Sam is in some trouble in the jungle. He leaps over the wall. Fields of Love is here too, but somehow Ghost Gaming are still getting out of here scot-free. Mike is in some trouble in the middle lane, but he dashes out, and Radiance somehow can't find a punish.
That's just unfortunate, man. I mean, there's not many other ways to look at it. It's the mobility, the jumps, a good cooldown for Sam there. He walks into the Harpy camp, kind of has to juke back up against the wall, but luckily his jump's right back for him, so he's able to get over there. And that damage that comes down from Fine OK, just enough to make you second-guess your engage. It's one of those moments, I mean, Discordia, her damage comes up big in terms of peel, but at the same time, you wonder if you had a Hell and you were able to heal there. If Ghost Gaming were able to turn that into more, I think that's a good ban on Radiance. But I don't know, this Discordia, especially considering how she's been performing so far this weekend, mainly in the hands of Radiance, it's been working out pretty well, and I think Twig has made her look good here in conjunction with this Winbats. And it's just too much damage to handle in one spot, plus good CC and the strife for appeal. It's just so difficult to chase down the kills you want.
It's just not easy there for Radiance at all, and in that situation, I mean, we saw a bunch of stuff come in. We saw Fine OK able to use sets of mobility to escape. We saw Twig use the Apple of Discord to help peel. We saw Mike dropping down some of the roots and silences to get out, and those pieces all kind of coming together to form all the control that Ghosts need. They're trusting each other to use those pieces optimally, and it absolutely worked there, and they get basically the perfect punish. Plus the Pyromancer at the tail end, and they're very nearly up 2,000 gold here at the 11-minute mark to go along with their 5-1 lead in the kills. Some good news, though. Cyclone Spin is level 12. He's been farming well. The rest of Radiance are not that far behind. They certainly can still fight back into this one. They still have a Chang'e and a Guan Yu late game to heal.
Yeah, that's the thing that, again, is going to start to pivot things a little bit later. A lot of this damage from the Assassins, very quick burst. You had mentioned the skewer damage in that last fight. And that's going to be applicable, but Bad Out of Hell gets Adapting out of engagements if he's, not feeling safe. The healing from Benji and Tings is going to be big. Maybe the little hearts that can come down from Cupid play a factor in there as well, but again, maybe not the most prominent first form of healing. And then you get some lockdown from Aurora. If you can play around it, I said this last game, but it's still big here, around the cooldowns that Ghost Gaming has, specifically from their support. And there's a lot of room to work with. He's realistically the main form of CC outside of that Fear No Evil that can come through. You just lock him down.
Mike being locked down right now, and no way he can escape. A nice commitment there underneath the Fields of Love, and nothing that the Nox support can do. But look at that, Radiance have 2 kill score, and they're both on Mike. And Mike is still, what, 2 levels, a level and a half or so ahead of Aurora. The little bit of pressure Radiance have found so far has not really turned into much for them.
And once again, he's going for a Thieves. Like, he's looking to be tankier this time around than he was last time. I think Stone of Binding came out first last time. And either way, I wouldn't be surprised if he still goes for it. Having protection shred on someone that otherwise has none is always going to be solid. But instead, he's looking for some early protections. He's trying to be the tank his team needs.
Adapting goes in and gets insta-pop. Fear No Evil lands onto Aurora and Tings. That's the second kill of this engagement going to Ghost. Who needs PBM when you got Sam and Twig popping off, and poor Adapting didn't get to do anything in that fight. That means now full fury goes to Ghost. The whole team here to confirm. And Radiance, they're letting this early game get away from them.
I mean, again, this team wins harder for Ghost. This is dangerous territory to be in for Radiance. Even if late game, I like your ability to survive and stay stable. If you're getting bursted down like that, I mean, Adapting didn't even get the chance to ult in that circumstance. That's where his safety is that ability to decide to turn some damage around or get on out of there. And I think, unfortunately for Radiance here, like you said, it's kind of getting out of hand. It's only 14 minutes in. They still have 5 towers standing. it's not the end of the world. 3,000 gold, no sweat off your back. It's a little uncomfortable, but it's not the end of the game and the end of the set. You can dig your heels in from here and turn around. It just requires better grouping. It requires a little bit better ult management, I think, from them. I mean, we're not necessarily getting to see a lot of these big, maybe peel ults like you have in Benji and Tings, or really set up ults like Cyclone has in the middle of a team fight. I think once they start grouping as 5, Radiance definitely still have a lot of say in the way this game is going to go.
I agree, Gore. I don't think this window has snapped closed just yet, but it certainly is closing, right? It's getting more narrow, and Radiance are going to have to find a way to get back onto the horse. One of the big problems is that Aurora is far behind now from Mike, and maybe not going to be as tanky as they like. Tings is falling a bit behind Captain Twig as well, who's 1-0-5 and having a great game for himself so far, but the biggest issue undoubtedly is Fine-OK and Sam. They're doing essentially whatever it is they want to right now, Gordon. Radiance are struggling to come up with an answer as Twig walks forward confidently into 3 and makes it back out of there easily.
Now just trying to find setup. Fine-OK has been the one that I think has caught my eye the most. I think this Discordia for Twig, the damage is there. Sam has had much better ults and much better setup. Proactive is the word we've been using the last 2 games. I think that's exactly what we've gotten to see here. But it's been Fine-OK's rotations this time around. Much more into the game and into the fights than he has been in the last 2. And it feels like he's making a much bigger impact in the backline.
There's the Fear No Evil adapting, makes it up to the sky though with that Bat of the Hell. Mike, underneath the Tier 1 tower, has been locked down, but he is able to retreat. Field of Loveland, as even Cyclone Spin joins the fray, and Sam for Soccer would be a great bounty if they could lock him down. Twig low as well, but somehow Ghost Gaming weave their way out. Now Fine-OK is here for cleanup duty. He's got the muffs, and he's got a double kill. The snipes land from long range from Panda Cat, and Fine-OK unrelenting, a triple kill from the set solo lane as he takes it to Radiance. They just cannot keep up.
And you can't chase them down. I mean, you have Tings in the perfect position to try and find maybe 2 kills there if they take some bad pathing, but at least 1. Fine-OK, Sam both incredibly low, and instead he just has to walk back, find farm, and recognize that he's not going to be able to find anything. Same thing for Benji there, unable to do anything. The Tier 1 tower still falls down. And again, the team that's winning is just starting to win harder. This comp has its holes, it has its ways to take it down. Unfortunately, Radiance just aren't able to do it. They even won the first half of that fight. It was Fine-OK's rotation that just takes everything and pulls it apart. That set getting into the back line is something you have to play against. Benji saw it, but there's only so much you can do to really stop him when he's willing to dive a Tier 2.
Benji unable to help, and Fine-OK improves to 5-0-3. 14,000 player damage, 6k ahead of the next closest, and with this build, Berserkers, Frostbound, Toxic Blade, you are not evading him, you're barely getting any healing, and you're dying way quicker than you thought. He is chewing through Radiance right now, and look at this Ghoster up now, 6,000 gold. They're starting to really run away with it here at this point, man. It's getting a bit closer out of reach. They're right at 6,000 gold. The experience deficit's getting out of hand as well, Goran. Radiance are going to need something big. They can't dump everything into Mike at the beginning of the fight and still not even kill him, right? I mean, they got to at least get that.